Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto disappears into ANBU Chunin exams Sasuke. Before I start, please support for more amazing content, and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by LostandLosing and link in the description and support writer. Let's start the video. Prologue Part 1. The young ANBU frowned behind his mask. Unofficial protection mission? The Hokage was joking, right? I'm afraid I don't understand, Hokage-sama. Sarutobi sighed and rubbed his temples. He's not very well liked. He's been sent to the hospital several times this month alone. I'm starting to get worried. That's why I want you to watch over him. The ANBU frowned but said nothing. His name, Hokage-sama? Sandaime gave a soft smile and handed him a file with the information he wanted. Uzumaki Naruto. I trust you know to keep this between us, Itachi. Hi, Hokage-sama. To say Itachi was confused was an understatement. For once in his life the Uchiha was completely and utterly bewildered. He just couldn't understand it. At all. For some reason the entire village seemed to hate Naruto. The entire thing. From what he could see, the blonde was soft-spoken, mild-mannered, and kind. He was also a goofball, prankster, and had the potential to become a genius and great shinobi. These were almost the exact same qualities the village saw in him and adored him for. It couldn't be the fact that he was a prankster either. All of his pranks had been both humorous and caused no lasting damage. The hate was completely illogical. There was no point, no purpose for it. Yet every time Naruto walked down the street all he got was glares and taunts, calls of demon. But what really drove home the distaste and hate for Itachi was the way the blonde continued to skip merrily down the street, a bright, almost a big smile on his face. It merely showed how long this had been going on. Itachi was starting to understand the Hokage's decision for putting him on this mission. Itachi frowned at the Sandaime. I'm not sure I understand, Hokage-sama. The Hokage sighed. Just keep an eye on him tonight. A very close eye. If he was anyone else, Itachi would have rolled his eyes. Didn't the Sandaime know that was why he was confused? Hokage-sama, tonight's the Kyuubi festival. I can't see someone attacking now. The Sandaime smiled sadly. You'd think that, huh? Just be careful. Itachi sighed, staring at the setting sun. He'd been here for hours and nothing had happened. The Sandaime was reacting. Sure, he'd seen how much people hated him, but no one had shown even the slightest hint of aggression. Almost like they were scared of Naruto beneath all the hate. The idea would be laughable if it wasn't true. He was broken out of his thoughts by the sound of splintering wood. His head whipped towards the house next to him. Thought the small window he could see his blonde charge slowly backing away from something. A bleeding cut visible on his cheek. His eyes widened as he watched a kunai fly past Naruto's head, a few strands of bright blonde hair fluttering to the ground. Looks like the Hokage was right. He pushed himself off the branch he was standing on and through the window, landing in front of the blonde in time to block the next kunai. He activated the Sharingan, burning every face in the room into his memory. Mostly the mob was made up of civilians, but there were a few shinobi scattered about. What got him though was the symbol of a fan stitched into one shinobi's clothes. The glaring red Sharingan staring back at him. He was suddenly really glad for the ANBU mask he wore. He spun around, grabbing the boy around the waist and racing out. His duty was to protect Naruto, not get into fights with other shinobi. He was pretty sure Naruto would get killed while he was distracted. Itachi stopped in an abandoned alley a ways away from the Hokage tower. He gently set the boy down and stared at him through the white mask. Are you hurt? He asked. The boy slowly nodded. I'm fine. His voice was airy, confused. Itachi wondered if this was the first time someone had cared enough to ask the boy if he was alright. He ran a critical eye over the boy's form but found no other injury other than the cut on his cheek. But as he looked up his eyes widened when he saw the small cut healing with a hiss. He brought one hand up and ran it over the pale cheek. The blonde jerked slightly. Itachi frowned. Your safety was entrusted to me by the Hokage-sama. I will not hurt you. The boy brightened. Hokage-Gigi? Behind his mask Itachi arched an eyebrow but nodded all the same. If you have no wounds that require immediate attention then we can go see him. Naruto nodded excitedly. I'm fine. Itachi nodded and picked him up, taking to the rooftops. Sarutobi looked up as Naruto entered, Itachi right behind him. He sighed. The night was not as peaceful as I'd hoped, then. Itachi nodded. I'm afraid not, Hokage-sama. He sighed and stood up, walking around the desk. Naruto seemed to find some cue in this, for he ran forward. Gigi. The Hokage sighed, gently wrapping him in an embrace. He looked up at Itachi, Any way you can identify the people there? Itachi nodded. Everyone. Naruto pulled back and stared at him. Really? I can barely remember half. Sarutobi smiled gently down at the boy. He's a Uchiha, Naruto. You remember that Keki Genkai, right? Naruto spun around to smile widely up at him. The Sharingan. It's a red eye that has 2 to 4 pupils. The first pupil, which everyone has, focuses on color. The second is motion perception, the third copies all motion perceived, and the fourth predicts motion. The ring that runs through the outer 3 pupils connects them to make the information easier to understand. It gives the user impeccable memory recall and near-perfect eyesight. It also grants the ability to see movements before they happen. This is done by combining rational thought with physics to see the action before it happens. The way the outer 3 pupils spin is said to cause slight hypnosis. The Manjikyu, the final stage of the Sharingan, which can only be achieved when you kill the person most important to you, can create extremely powerful hallucinations. Itachi arched an eyebrow in surprise. That's correct. Where'd you learn that? They don't teach it in the academy. Naruto looked down. I've never been in the academy before. Sarutobi stood and flattened out his robes. The council won't allow it, he stated. Itachi sighed and pushed himself off the wall. I wish to ask you a question, Hokage-sama. The Hokage nodded. I want to know why everyone hates Naruto so much. Sarutobi froze. That's an S-class secret. Itachi frowned. That the entire village knows. I can't protect him if I don't know everything. He looked down at Naruto, who was staring at the Hokage in interest. And no offense, sir, but this is his life you're screwing with, the Hokage sighed. Sit down. This could take a while. Itachi blinked. The Kyuubi's not dead? That's correct. And he's locked inside Naruto here? That's correct. Itachi looked down at the boy. Naruto had pushed his shirt up and was staring at his blank stomach. He watched as Naruto placed a hand on his stomach. Said hand began to glow softly, the seal etching into place. Wow. That's odd. Naruto stated, staring at the mark. The other 2 males stared at him in surprise. Naruto Sarutobi asked slowly, where did you learn to use chakra? Naruto looked up in confusion before shrugging. Itachi frowned. The council's made up of idiots. Naruto looked up at him in confusion. Itachi stared back at him with cold black eyes, having long since taken off his mask upon the Hokage's suggestion. Hokage-sama, I have an idea. Sarutobi looked up. Naruto, why don't go on down to the library? I hear Kleiko's warming up to you. Naruto stared at him before nodding and leaving the room. The Sandaime turned tired eyes on Itachi. I'm all ears, Itachi. Prologue Part 2. Itachi stared at the boy in front of him. The boy was wearing a dark blue shirt and black jacket with black cargo pants. He hadn't attached the shuriken holder, but a black, silver-lined weapons pouch hung from his hip. You know what you're doing, correct? Naruto nodded. I've got 1 year in the academy. After that I either take the genin test and pass or fail and never become a shinobi. What other kids learn in years I must learn in months. Sounds like fun. Itachi frowned. When did Naruto get sarcastic? He resigned the deep-felt urge to sigh. If you have any problems, come to me. We have no idea what kind of side effects having the Kyuubi in you could cause. Naruto nodded. Yeah, sure. 3 weeks later, Naruto yawned briefly, putting his head back in his hand. I don't think this teacher likes me very much, he thought, staring at the diagram on the board explaining seals and the most common ones, like exploding tags. He sighed, turning his head to look out the window. The teacher, unfortunately, noticed. Uzumaki. What is the purpose of circular seals? Naruto stared at the woman in disdain. We don't cover that for 3 more years. A smirk rested on the woman's lips, thinking she had him. Circular seals are used for mass compression, Naruto stated in a dull tone. The woman blinked, while the blonde rolled his eyes. They're used when you're trying to fit something very big into something very small, he restated before turning his attention to back out the window. Naruto sighed, closing his eyes and letting the breeze rustle his hair. When he opened his eyes again, he was in a sewer. The halls were long and gray, water dripping from every surface. He blinked. Okay. Sighing, he began to walk in the only way possible. The villagers probably threw me in the sewer when I fell asleep. Or jail. That would be just my luck. Naruto blinked when he came upon a large set of metal bars. I knew. I just knew it. He blinked when a large shadow shifted behind the big cage and a large red eye appeared. Or not, he trailed off. He frowned when the giant fox in front of him shifted, glowed red, then was replaced by a red-haired, red-eyed human male. They stared at each other in a tense silence till Naruto noticed something flicker around behind the redhead. "Kyubi, eh? That's a nice genjutsu," he stated, staring at the 9 red tails. The fox grinned. Naruto sighed and looked around. Space distortion. My mind's attempt to give space to a place that has none. He looked back at the Kyubi. "What do you want?" Kyubi arched an eyebrow. "You're not scared?" Naruto grinned. "You know those spirals on the seal? Those are the marks of a Shinigami. You're not getting out of here." Kyubi blinked and stared up at the seal on the cage. No, I guess not. "What I want to destroy Konoha, that's what. But as that's not going to happen, I was thinking of a deal." Naruto glared. "I'm not letting you out off there." The redhead blinked. "Who said anything about letting me out?" "No, in exchange for my chakra and knowledge, just give me the sensation of sight, smell, touch again. I'll never have to leave this cage. Besides, in this situation you can only gain." Naruto frowned. "Why should I?" "What do you want?" Kyubi rolled his eyes. "If you were stuck in here for 6 years and had no way to even see anything going on around you, what would you do?" Naruto nodded slowly. "Good point. I still don't trust you. I'm going to leave now," he said slowly, turning and walking away. Itachi looked up as he sensed a bright blue chakra burst into the library. Only one person's chakra was that powerful and bright. Suki's supposed to be watching him today. He thought, standing and following the blonde. When he found Naruto, the boy was standing in the middle of the aisle, a book held in one hand, the other brushing over the book, a look of concentration on his face. As he got closer, Itachi frowned when the blonde didn't respond. There was something really wrong. Itachi was close enough to read easily over the boy's shoulder, and he hadn't noticed yet. Then he noticed the book the blonde was reading, a book on seals. A book on seals and how to change them. That got him worried. "Naruto, don't you dare mess with that seal." Naruto whipped around, staring into endless cold black eyes. "Itachi-san?" he stuttered. The black eyes narrowed. "Why are you reading that?" Naruto gulped. "I'm just making sure no one can tamper with it." Itachi frowned. "Did someone threaten you, Naruto?" The blonde shook his head. "No, I'm just a little shaken." Itachi kneeled down so he was at Naruto level. "What happened?" Naruto sighed. "I just had a small talk with the Kyubi." Itachi blinked, then frowned. He reached forward, shut the book Naruto was holding, and placed it back on the shelf. "We're going to see the Hokage. Now." Naruto gulped as he stared at the Hokage. Sarutobi had a tense expression on his face. Finally he looked up, a thoughtful expression on his face. "Oddly enough, I agree with the Kyubi. We can't lose in this situation." Itachi frowned. "You want him to go through with this?" Sarutobi sighed. "Personally, no, but it would probably be in Naruto's best interest. If he wants to do this." They both looked over at Naruto, who nodded slowly. Itachi let out a low groan. "You're both insane." Naruto took in a deep breath before starting, his hands and arms moving in intricate patterns, bright blue chakra flowing from his fingertips. Finally, when the altered seal was complete, he placed his hands over his stomach and felt the two seals melt together. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a burst of Kyubi's chakra flew through the seal, feeling like fire in his veins. The world turned white, then black. Itachi was the first to notice, and thus the first to react. He rushed forward, grabbing the blonde's shoulders in a tight grip and slowly lowering him to the floor. Gently he brushed the long blonde hair away and checked for a pulse. A soft, steady beat met his fingers. He let out a breath of relief. Naruto groaned, slowly opening his eyes to stare at Itachi and the Sandaime behind him. "What happened?" A low chuckle met his ears. "Perfect kit. Absolutely perfect." Prologue Part 3. The Sandaime sighed, looking over the report in his hands. He looked up at Itachi. "You're sure this is accurate?" At Itachi's nod he sighed and placed it down on the desk, rubbing his temples. "We'll just have to hope for the best then, Hokage-sama." Sarutobi looked back up when Itachi spoke. The young ANBU hesitated briefly before continuing. "It's about Naruto. Yesterday, I was wondering why he fainted," he stated, looking up. The Hokage sighed. "That's where the Yondaime made his mistake with the seal. The seal was designed to hold back everything the Kyubi was, including all of its chakra. This was a mistake for the simple reason that Naruto himself could have easily broken the seal in a fit of emotion. The new seal allows chakra to move between the two. Naruto blacked out earlier because the new source of chakra briefly overwhelmed him. Unless he suffers severe chakra depletion, this shouldn't happen again." Itachi nodded. Sarutobi looked up when his door opened. Naruto walked in, keeping his head bowed as he shut the door behind him. The Hokage frowned. Naruto, what's wrong? Naruto looked up slowly, blue eyes glistening behind his bangs. Hokage Gigi? Can I take the genin test early? Sarutobi frowned. Early? How early are we talking, Naruto? The blonde took a deep breath. How about now? Itachi sighed slightly as he gently opened the door. The boy needs to learn to lock his doors. Gently, he closed the door behind him as he walked into the apartment. Naruto, he called out. He frowned when he got no answer. He walked farther into the apartment, looking around for the small boy. Naruto? He called. Something slammed into his chest, pushing him roughly to the ground, his hands pinned above his head. What? He shouted, brining one leg up to kick away his attacker. He pushed himself to his feet as the figure landed in a crouch in front of him. His attacker turned out to be a 16-year-old girl with long black hair and dark ebony eyes. She was wearing a soft black tank top and black pants. 2 kusarigama hung from her hip. You know, she whispered, her voice sending a shiver down his spine. It's polite to knock. Naomi, that's enough. The girl's entire body tensed before relaxing. Hi. She whispered. Hearing a soft thump from his left, Itachi turned and blinked. Naruto was sitting cross-legged on the kitchen table, eating an apple. Naruto? The blonde smiled. Why is it that no one ever looks up? He asked. Naruto turned his attention back to the young woman in front of him. Thank you, Naomi. You can go. It was dismissal. A plain get-out. Dark ebony eyes gleamed in the soft light before the girl nodded. Call me if there's trouble. She says. She jumped backwards and for a moment it looked like she was hanging there before her form shattered like glass and disappeared. A summons. Itachi realizes. He turns to the blonde still on the counter and arches an eyebrow. Naruto smiled lightly. That was Naomi. Kyuubi's second in command. Itachi nods before the words actually register. He looked back at the boy to see smiling widely at him. The human thing, Naruto stated, it's something any decent 5-tailed demon can do. Itachi groaned and shook his head. How many? Naruto grinned. Naomi has 7 tails. Itachi groaned again. He sighed and looked over at the boy. Sandaime-sama told me that you made genin. Naruto nodded, slipping off the counter. You do know that it's still the middle of the year, right? Naruto stopped walking and turned to look at him. Your point is what, exactly? Itachi sighed. Because it's the end of the year, you can't be placed on a genin team, which means you won't have a sensei, which means you can't take missions right now. Basically, you're a shinobi in name only. Naruto sighed, sinking down onto the couch. I know that. I did what I thought was best. I already knew most of what they teach, and anything I don't know I can learn. I was not going to put up with senseless hate when there wasn't any real gain. I measured the odds. I did what I thought was best. Itachi stared at him for a while before nodding. I agree. He straightened. Come on, let's go. Naruto's head shot up. Eh? He pushed himself to his feet, stumbling after him. He managed to pull on his shoes and grab his headband as he walked out the door. He jogged forward until his was by Itachi's side, ignoring the whispers and glares. Where are we going? Ebony eyes glanced down at him. I was planning to do this when you made genin. We're heading to the Hokage Tower. The library will have what we need. When they arrived, Itachi walked through the shelves, knowing exactly where he was going. Naruto could only stumble after. When they stopped, the shelves were filled with scrolls instead of the normal books. Itachi gently pulled a small scroll off the shelf and popped it open. It had one long black line at the top, and that was it. Itachi gently laid it down and nodded. No one knows who your parents were, and Sandaime-sama refuses to tell me. He said something about a will. He also said that the will wouldn't stop me from looking for information. All I had to do was find enough info. This scroll tells you if you have a Keki Genkai. For all we know, you could be the last surviving member of what was once a famous clan and not know it. Naruto blinked but nodded. What you're saying is that Hokage Gigi knows who my parents are, but because of a will can't tell me. That this scroll could help me find out who my parents are. Itachi nodded. Just write your name in blood and it will tell you your parents' names and your Keki Genkai, if you have one. Naruto nodded, already biting his thumb to draw the blood. He smeared his name across the line, and watched as it faded out before words reappeared. He tilted his head to the side, slowly reading the words on the scroll. Keki Genkai Affinity Limit Break. Mother Uzumaki Kushina. Father Kazama Erasure. He looked over at Itachi. Who's Kazama Erasure? Itachi frowned. I'm not sure, but it sounds familiar. There's a book on Keki Genkais around here somewhere. I'll be right back. Erasure sounds familiar to me too. Naruto blinked, turning his attention to the demon inside him. Kyubi? How is it familiar to you? There was a pause, as if the great beast was trying hard to remember. The memory's fuzzy, but just as I was being sealed inside you I saw a flash of silver and someone shouting, Arashi-sensei. I don't know why the guy sounded so panicked, he should have been celebrating. My reign of terror was over. There was only really one person in trouble right then, and that was... Both human and demon came to the same conclusion at the same time. Naruto's breath caught in his throat and refused to come out. His eyesight blurred and darkened around the edges. All his focus on the words, Father Kazama Erasure, he stumbled back, desperately trying to regain his lost sense of balance. His back hit the side of a bookcase and he didn't try to stay up when his knees buckled. His breath came in short, raspy breaths. Shit, that's messed up. Sorry, Kit. When he didn't get any response, he continued. I think I can understand why he chose you. The Kyubi was starting to get worried. He must have seen how strong you were, how strong you would become. You were the only one he trusted to hold me back from destroying the village. The only one he trusted to hold his legacy. He made a good choice. He still didn't get any answer. Kit? Kit? Kit! Itachi walked back in. Found it. Apparently the affinity limit Bri aka Naruto. Itachi shouted, dropping the book and running over to the boy. Naruto? Naruto, what's wrong? The Uchiha reached forward and shook Naruto's unresponsive shoulders. Naruto, the boy let out a shaky breath. Itachi-san? Naruto took another shaky breath and pushed himself up slightly. Itachi-san? What's wrong? Itachi frowned. That's what I was wondering. Naruto blinked before his eyes darkened and he slumped back. Itachi frowned. Naruto? What's wrong? Sad, dark blue eyes looked up at him. I know who Kazama Erasure is. Itachi frowned. My father is the Yondaime Hokage. Itachi's eyes widened. Naruto the blonde straightened and pushed himself to his feet. What's the affinity limit break? He asked. He walked over to the dropped book with a smooth grace that said he was tightly controlling his movements. Itachi blinked. Naruto? Naruto's eyes hardened and when he spoke his voice was cold and distant. Not now, Itachi-san. Itachi frowned but nodded and walked over to the book. He just needs time. He flipped through the book until he found the proper page. The affinity limit break gives the user the ability to change their chakra into their elemental affinity. Itachi frowned, looking over the rest of the page. Apparently you need to use a series of hand seals until you can do it mentally. It doesn't sound that exciting. Naruto grinned. Maybe not to you. You're thinking about it in the wrong way. What are the hand seals? Itachi sighed. Tora, Yasagi, Lisabuta, Tora, Saru, Ohitsuji, Tora. Naruto frowned. I'll figure this out eventually. He sighed. Itachi shook his head. Come on, let's go see Sandaime-sama. Naruto blinked. Why? Itachi shook his head. He'll have those element cards that tell you what your elemental affinity is. Plus, will, remember? Naruto nodded, stealing the book out of Itachi's hands so he could look over the information. The Sandaime and Itachi stared at each other before Sarutobi sighed and pulled a scroll from his desk. Naruto was originally going to be told when he turned 18. By then he would have an idea and understanding of why Erasure didn't want people to know Naruto was his son. You see, Erasure had a lot of enemies. He didn't want people to go after his son before the boy could properly defend himself. I trust you boys to know this is an S-class secret. They both nodded. Well, Naruto, it seems that he gave you practically everything he owns. He left you the Kazama clan house on the condition that if his last surviving student Hatake Kakashi be provided a sanctuary should he need it. He left you all his jutsus and anything else you can in that house. However, all pictures of his team he wants to be given to Kakashi. Sarutobi sighed and pulled out a piece of paper. You'll need this for your Keki Genkai. Just channel chakra into it. Naruto nodded, gently taking the paper. After applying the necessary chakra he watched as the paper split in half. Wind. Sarutobi sighed, a dangerous affinity to have with your Keki Genkai. Your father proved that. He looked up and glared at them. Now out. The both of you. I have work to do. Naruto blinked down at the package he received before he looked back up at Itachi. What's this? Itachi rolled his eyes. A gift. Now open it. Naruto blinked but nodded, slowly pulling the object from its wrappings. He blinked at the long, thin object that was about the length of his arm. A slight twist of his wrist had the thing opening as well. A smile stretched across his lips in understanding. Tessen. He breathed. He stood up, flicking the fan open. It was made of a polished wood and soft blue material with the image of 2 intertwined dragons on it. H grinned up at Itachi. "Thank you," he whispered. Itachi nodded and shrugged. "I just thought it would be useful." Itachi shook his head at the sight before him. Naruto lay sprawled on the ground, surrounded by books and paper. Black ink marks were scattered across his face, the ink brush tangled in his hair. The darker boy sighs, slowly walking forward through the mess. He kneels down and gently untangles the brush from the boy's long hair, being careful not to tug. Still, the boy gives a soft groan and blue eyes flicker open to stare at him. The boy pushes himself up into a sitting position and rubs his eyes. "Itachi-san?" He shook his head briefly to clear away the rest of the cobwebs and grinned up at the Uchiha. Itachi raised an eyebrow. "Well, you've certainly got a mess going on." Naruto blinks and looks around. The blonde frowned. "You think?" Itachi rolled his eyes. "What are you doing?" Naruto looked up at him. "Working on containment seals. Normal ones are too big and take too long to get into for useful purposes on the battlefield. I'm seeing what I can do." The eyebrow went up again. "Okay." Naruto grinned. "Hokage says that if I can get good enough at seals then I can try for my mastery. He says Ota-san was the last seal master in the village, so we need another." The grin widened. Itachi looked up at the Hokage, his confusion hidden behind his mask. Sarutobi sighed. "Itachi, we need to talk." "It's about your clan prologue part 4. Itachi stared, just stared. "You're joking." The Sandaime had better be joking, or he was going to wring the little blonde's neck. Sarutobi chuckled lightly and shook his head. "I'm afraid not. I had him doing a few D ranks on his own, but it was obvious to everyone that he was overqualified for them. I guess that one of the ANBU got sick of it, and accidentally gave him the written part, while accidentally telling him that I was being overworked with paperwork, and could he fill this out please?" The Hokage sighed and picked up a piece of paper. He chuckled lightly. "You know, most of my Chunin this they wouldn't be able to fill out even half of it." Itachi arched an eyebrow. "I guess that's what happens when you memorize the entire Hokage library." He winced. "Damn it. I was trying to forget about his photographic memory." Sarutobi chuckled then sighed. "But because he passed the written I had to give him the physical. Unfortunately he passed that too. Thankfully he was just over the low-range score point. That means that he has the mindset and knowledge for a lot higher a position, but skill-wise he's where he should be now." Itachi sighed and shook his head. "What is this? I've never even heard of it." The Sandaime shook his head. "It's used as an alternative for during wars. Most people don't even know it exists. The only difference is that compared to the normal one it's harder. A lot harder. People just don't tend to die during this one. However, because he passed I am, by law, required to make the necessary change." Itachi nodded then ground his teeth. "So you're telling me that Naruto, who's only been a genin for about 8 months now, made Chunin, completely on accident?" Sarutobi nodded sagely. "Yes, I believe that's what I was saying." Itachi sighed as he finally found Naruto. The boy had found a wide clearing next to a stream that ran up the backside of the Hokage monument. It was a perfect place for training, closed off and far away. He leaned against a tree and folded his arms across his chest, watching as the boy ran through the complicated katas for a taijutsu technique with all the precision of a machine. The Chunin had changed drastically from the young, barely 6-year-old boy he had to save on his birthday. He wore a dark red shirt with the black stitching of a Konoha leaf symbol on the front of it. Over that was a thin black jacket, the long sleeves hiding the 2 small fans strapped to each wrist. The ensemble was completed by the black cargo pants and a black version of the normally blue shinobi sandals. The most obvious change was the number of weapons he now carried, the most visual sign that Naruto was overqualified as a genin. A shuriken holder was strapped to his left thigh while his right was decorated with a saban holder, and slightly below that a small bag of powder poison. The black and white weapons pouch still hung from his hip, but 3 more had joined it. One he knew for a fact held those precious seals Naruto had made, no bigger than an explosive tag and very easy to use, just like he'd said. Another held a liquid poison, fast, deadly, and dangerous. The last held bandages and drugs and whatever else a medic nin would need, just not as much. That's why it was hard to remember that this boy in front of him was only 6. Naruto slowly slid out of the stance he'd finished in and turned to stare at the ANBU, a smile on his face. "Ohio, Itachi-san." Itachi nodded, slowly walking forward. His eyes swept over the clearing and found the light green Chunin vest lying folded next to the tessin he'd given the blonde. Naruto slowly followed his gaze and chuckled lightly. "It was weird. One of the ANBU had asked me to fill out this paper for Hokage, and once I turned it in he asked me to do all this weird stuff, and the next thing I know I'm a Chunin. Itachi stared at him, then shook his head. It figures, he whispered. He looked up at the boy with cold black eyes and sighed. Most shinobi have already chosen their area of expertise by the time they become Chunin. Figured out yours yet? The answer came without hesitation. Seals. Naruto whispered. Seals and my family techniques. I'm also learning the taijutsu style for the Tessen and some futon jutsu. Maybe a few medic jutsu and another weapon. I'm really widespread. Naruto shrugged. I figure it'll surprise people. Itachi shook his head again. Just don't overwork yourself. Naruto nodded. I'll be careful. Sarutobi smiled at the ANBU in front of him. Have you heard? Itachi stared at him for a minute before he sighed. What has Naruto done now? Please tell me he didn't make Jonin on accident. The Sandaime chuckled and shook his head. No, thankfully. I don't think our sanity could handle it, but apparently some hunters and ANBU have taken an interest in him. The boys got everyone staring at him. It's nice. Itachi stared at the Hokage in surprise. No, it's not nice. This is bad. Very bad. How can having Konoha's elite take an interest in you be a good thing? Sandaime shook his head in amusement. I think you're overreacting. Itachi growled before he frowned and leaned back in his chair, staring at the Hokage with a frown. Okay, what's the real reason you called me here? Sarutobi winced before he sighed and stared at the paperwork that littered his desk. How's the plan coming? Itachi looked down. It's coming. Sarutobi frowned. Itachi took a deep breath and straightened. I don't want anyone to know the truth. Not even Naruto. Sarutobi's eyes widened. Itachi the Uchiha looked down again. It's better if he hated me. Naruto stared at his friend, biting his lip. Gomen, Itachi-san? Itachi looked up at him, black eyes hiding a number of emotions. It's okay. He whispered, blue eyes narrowed in anger. No, it's not okay. Your best friend just committed suicide. Things are not okay. Itachi winced. Naruto's eyes softened and he sat down in front of the Uchiha, resting his head on Itachi's knee. Itachi let out a slow breath and smiled down at Naruto. The blonde smiled softly, his eyes distant. Did Hokage tell you about ANBU? Itachi nodded, even though Naruto couldn't see it. The blonde continued talking anyways. I'm going to try to get in. I think I can do it. Itachi tensed. Naruto the blonde continued in a sing-song tone. I turned 7 last month. I think I can handle it. Itachi leaned down, wrapping his arms around the boy. I'm sure you can. I just wish I would be here to see it. Sarutobi stared hard at the young blonde in front of him. He's too young for this. You sure about this? Naruto winced, not really. But I want to do this. Sarutobi stared a little more before sighing. All right. Just be careful. Naruto nodded, sitting a little straighter. Naruto ran through the streets, adrenaline coursing through his veins. Despite this, and the bloodbath he just left behind, an unnatural calm was blanketing his mind, keeping out the panic and disorder that should be there. It's the mask. He thought dimly, bringing one hand up to brush over the white ANBU mask hiding his features. It had been a bloodbath, of that he was sure. The entire clan lay dead in the streets. Everyone except the boy, no older than he. His body was fine, but Naruto couldn't say the same for his mind. There was only one person missing, the one to have done this. I should have seen this coming. He was getting distant. He thought. He slid to a stop in front of the Konoha gates and stared at the retreating figure. Uchiha Itachi. He called. The murderer turned to him, an eyebrow arched. Naruto's lips twisted behind his mask, knowing that Itachi wouldn't recognize him behind the mask. He'd only gotten it earlier this morning and had been running to tell his friend when he'd come across the Uchiha massacre. Naruto's hand twitched, inching towards the seal that held his ANBU sword. I must ask you to stand down and return to the Hokage Tower with me. If you do not cooperate, I have to take you by force. Itachi's lips twitched in sardonic amusement. You'll be dead on the ground before you can try. Naruto's eyes narrowed and somewhere in the back of his mind he knew this was a very bad idea. Let's test that theory, he whispered, channeling Churka into the seal and feeling the sword appear. He moved it into the basic guard position. He immediately realized just why this was a bad idea. Itachi was stronger and faster, along with him having more experience. Plus Naruto's size was working against him, and he couldn't find it in himself to hurt the older ANBU. Naruto growled, he is not my friend. Somehow, in a movement Naruto couldn't follow, Itachi slid through his defenses and had the blade aimed for his neck. Naruto managed to save his head by leaning back, but the blade still caught the mask and tore it off, the force of it sending him spinning backwards. Itachi brought the blade he was holding up with the intention to kill him but froze when angry blue eyes met his own Sharingan red. "Naruto?" he whispered, stepping back in surprise. Naruto looked across at his sword but frowned when he realized it was too far. He turned his attention back up to the surprised Uchiha, and gave him a feral grin, shoving his weight up and back. The move had his feet flying over his head, and he just managed to slam one foot into Itachi's chin. That would probably be the only hit he got in this fight. He reached behind him and grabbed another seal. He channeled Shurika into it, and watched as it crackled around his hand like blue lightning before the seal disappeared completely, and the Tenzin appeared in his hand. He snapped it open, the wind whipping around him at the move. Itachi stared at his old charge in horror. "Damn it, Naruto! Why did you have to be the one to find me?" His eyes widened when he found himself on the receiving end of the Kamaitachi no Jutsu. He jumped out of the way and flipped over the young blonde. "Gomen, Naruto. It's better if you hated me," Naruto gasped as he felt Itachi's sword bury itself in his back, right beside his spine. He moved to get out of the way, but the sword hilt descended and hit the pressure point in his neck. Blue eyes widened before they fluttered shut. "Itachi," Naruto stared dully at the wall in front of him. The Sandaime stared at him in worry. "I should never have let Itachi talk me into that promise." He sighed. "Naruto, I think I have a mission for you. Very high rank, but you're the only one who can do it." Life seemed to return a little to Naruto's eyes a bit, and his eyes flickered to the Hokage. "I need you to protect Uchiha Sasuke. Both from others and from himself. You need to do this cause your age will get you close. You'll masquerade as an academy student and again as genin on his team when the time comes. During this you'll be placed on an ANBU team and assigned normal missions for your rank. Your mission will end when the council and I deem that Uchiha-kun is no longer a flight risk and can protect himself. You're allowed to act however you want, and like most of your life, your status as an ANBU will be hidden from all but who must know. Only you and I will be able to pass out the information." Sarutobi stared at the boy for a minute before he sighed. "Please, Naruto, don't transfer the sins of the brother onto Uchiha-kun. You are the last person I would think to do that." Naruto nodded, eyes still vague and distant. "Of course, Hokage-sama." Sarutobi winced. Naruto stared at his reflection in the mirror. The shock was slowly fading and was being replaced by anger and a hollow emptiness. It would take time, just like before. Just like all the other times. Everything had been put away, the Tenzin and sword locked away in their seals. The small apartment had been packed away in boxes and then put in other seals which were tucked away for the moment. He was moving into the Kazama clan house. He'd be fully moved in by tomorrow. This place just held too many memories. He'd be fully moved in by tomorrow. Naruto's hand tightened around the handle of the kunai, and he slowly brought it up. With his free hand he moved his hair up and away from his collarbone. He pressed the kunai against the soft skin of his neck. The blade caught skin and a small drip of blood ran down his neck. His eyes squeezed shut, and he tightened his grip. There was brief resistance before the blade jerked free. Long strands of bright blonde hair fell quietly to the floor. Naruto smiled grimly at his reflection and short-cut hair which was slowly pulling up into spikes without the weight. He looked down at his dark clothes and grinned. He was going to need something bright, very bright. The smiling white mask of ANBU. Chapter 1A Hate for Traitors. Acceptance. Peals of laughter and shouts of rage filled the village of Konoha as Uzumaki Naruto ran from the enraged Chunins, a paint bucket dangling from one hand. Up on a rooftop, well away from the danger, two ANBU watched the chase in amusement. A third ANBU in a Nico mask walked up to them. "What did Taicho do this time?" a soft, feminine voice whispered out. Beside her the ANBU with an Inu mask chuckled and pointed to the left. "Take a look." Nico turned and winced as she caught sight of the defiled Hokage monument. "Isn't he overdoing it a bit much?" The one in the Tora mask looked down at the Chunins chasing their Taicho. "Should we help them?" Nico shook her head. "If I thought we could catch him, sure. But since I know we can't, I content to sit here and watch Iruka-sensei do it." Naruto sighed from where he sat tied up. If his own team couldn't catch him, then how could a Chunin? A Chunin? It beat all logic. He blinked when he heard the class groan and focused on the memory his mind had automatically captured and filed away. Henshe? This would be fun. The blonde snickered as he remembered the image of his sensei lying in a small pool of blood from his nosebleed. The male hormonal system was never to be underestimated. He blinked and turned wide, innocent eyes up to the man from where he was scrubbing away the paint he'd put on the Hokage monument as Irika-sensei's words slowly filtered in his brain. What was with him today? All the same, he smirked when he fully registered the deal. Ramen, eh? Irika-sensei never learned. Irika stared down at his student in amazement as he gobbled down his food. He shook his head in bemusement and asked the question that had been nagging him all day. He stared at the bright blue eyes as Naruto responded in his overly loud voice that someday he was going to be Hokage and be better than all the previous ones. He wasn't expecting what happened next though. Naruto, staring out at the village, whispered in a soft voice he never heard before, "The main job of the Hokage is to protect his village. These are good people, Irika-sensei. Sure, they've made mistakes, but it makes them human. I have no right to judge their fate, that's for Enma to do. That's why I want to protect them while I can. Because even though they've done nothing but spite me, they deserve a second chance." Irika stared at his student in silent shock. "Naruto, when did you get so wise?" Naruto looked up with a pained smile. "I want to give them that second chance, because if they can have it, can fix themselves and pull though, then maybe, so can I." Irika gave a warm smile. "I'm sure you can, Naruto." The boy gave him a wide smile before he pushed himself off his chair. "I've got to go. There's something I need to do before tomorrow." "See you," he shouted, waving a hand as he ran. Sarutobi smiled lightly as a shadow appeared in the window ledge. "Good evening, Naruto." The blonde nodded, slipping easily into the room. "GG." Sarutobi's smile widened. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" Naruto moved to lean against the desk and stared at the piles of paperwork both on the floor and on the desk. "Tomorrow's the genin exams." The Sandaime blinked and looked up. "This is true. Is something wrong?" Naruto looked up, blue eyes shining unnaturally in the dim light. "I believe that there may be a potential traitor in the village. I would like permission to verify if this is truly a threat, and if need be, permission to stop it before it gets out of hand." Sarutobi stared hard at the boy, a frown on his face. Naruto had a thing about traitors. "Permission granted. However, I wonder if letting you take care of it yourself is a good idea." Naruto gave a grim smile. "I'll keep him in one piece for Ibiki-san GG." So he failed. On purpose. It wasn't all that hard. His chaotic chakra made it easy to overload the rather simple Bunshin jutsu, so he put on the disappointed mask and walked over to the school swing, sliding onto it. He stared out at the children who had graduated with what could be a face that resembled a kicked puppy, but inside he was laughing his head off. They were taught in the academy that a good shinobi could see underneath the underneath, but the senseis never bothered to do it themselves. The idiots. "Naruto, can I talk to you for a minute?" The blonde turned his head, resisting the urge to snarl. "Mizuki," he thought as much. He nodded, standing and following with the grace that had told the Sandaime and his team that he was pissed, and so was tightly controlling his movements. Mizuki didn't notice. Like he had said, the idiots. Naruto stared at the scroll in front of him. The forbidden scroll of all things. Naruto snorted as he stared at it. He probably knew most of these. All the same, he snapped open the scroll and read through it. His mind automatically separated the information, merging the information with jutsu he already knew and filing the ones he didn't know away to be looked at later. It was one of the advantages of having a photographic memory. He stopped and rolled it back up when he felt someone approach. Another few feet and he identified the person. Damn it, I don't need Irika-sensei here right now. If Irika was here when Mizuki showed up, things could get drastically out of hand. It might even reveal some unfortunate truths, like my status as something more than just an academy student. He thought grimly. All the same, he put on his stupid act when the Chunin arrived. Heh, I found you, Irika-sensei. He shouted with glee, inwardly resisting the urge to gag. That sounded just a bit too sweet. He winced lightly when Irika's fist hit his head. Idiot! I found you! Naruto let out a nervous chuckle. Same difference. Why did he put himself through this? Oh yeah, being smart and interesting was what made him the emotional wreck he was. He mentally shook his head to clear out the thoughts before he turned the tables against Mizuki. If he was going to be a fucking idiot, then he was going to be a trusting fucking idiot. He almost let his grin turn a bit sadistic when he saw the look on Irika's face. His head turned slightly as the sound of shuriken cutting through the air met his ears. So Mizuki was here, eh? The idiotic grin melted off his face, and with it the dope facade. He grabbed the hand that slammed into his chest and pulled Irika out off harm's way with him. He'd be damned if he let one of the two people he considered precious be hurt. Naruto looked over at the Chunin and handed him the forbidden scroll as he stood. Hold this, he whispered in a soft but deadly voice. Iruka blinked up at his student. Naruto? The blonde turned and gazed coldly at Mizuki. You know, I was going to let you off easy. But you put Iruka-sensei in danger. Bad idea, he whispered lowly. The soft voice he was using was a carryover from his pre-Itachi days, and he used it now as an ANBU. It was one of his trademarks. He learned that hearing what sounded like the voice of a child from behind the stoic ANBU mask tended to freak people out. He thought it was funny. Naruto shook his head as he walked forward, as if he was disappointed. You know, you picked the wrong person to pick as your tool. I'm not really fond of traitors, nor am I innocent or an academy student. He could feel the weight of the two men's gazes resting on him. Iruka was staring at him in confusion and concern while Mizuki's gaze was dark and disgusted. The shock faded almost immediately as Mizuki smirked and proclaimed, So you admit it. You know the truth. The truth that the reason this village hates you is because Iruka snapped to the present to shout out. Mizuki, don't. The idiot didn't listen. The Yondaime sealed the nine-tailed fox into you. You are the fox. After that Mizuki started to laugh hysterically. What neither men seemed to realize was that Naruto was still standing there, calm and unfazed by what should have been the greatest secret of his life. Finally unable to take it, Naruto rolled his eyes and stated in an annoyed voice, Oh, shut up. Mizuki's laughter died off as Naruto stared at him unwavering. Finally Naruto raised a closed hand and said in a patient, slightly condescending tone one would use when talking to a child who couldn't understand the simplest of problems. The Yondaime, sealed Kyuubi into me. He was the best seal master Konoha has ever had. He knew what he was doing. Kyuubi isn't coming out. 2. Kyuubi been stuck in my head for, 12 years. People tend to grow on you after a period of time, and Kyuu's very protective of me, thus he shares in my dislike of traitors. 3. Since Kyuu shares in my dislike of traitors, if I really was him you'd be in pieces right now. When you think about it, it's pretty obvious that I'm not the Kyuubi. The two men stared at him in shock. Naruto blinked large, expensive blue eyes at the both of them. What? Iruka stared at him in surprise, and if the situation weren't so serious, and he not so shocked, he probably would have laughed. Only Naruto could go from being deadly serious to innocently confused in a second. But he did manage to stutter out, Why you know about the Kyuubi? Naruto looked at him, and waved a dismissive hand, Known since I was 6. Mizuki growled, I'll kill you, you damn fox. He shouted, throwing the giant shuriken attached to his back. Naruto, move! But the blonde didn't move, just continued to stand there. Iruka looked like he was going to jump in when Naruto ducked down so the shuriken could pass harmlessly over his head. Naruto didn't let it get that far. He reached up as it passed and grabbed it in the middle, letting the force spin him around like a top as he pushed up. By the time he'd stopped spinning, he was facing Mizuki and the weapon was held in his right hand off to the side. When Naruto spoke, it was in a soft but clear tone. Mizuki, Chunin sensei of Konohagakure no Sato in the land of Hai no Kuni, you are being charged with treason against the shinobi village of Konohagakure no Sato, attempted murder of Yumino Iruka, Chunin sensei of Konohagakure no Sato in the land of Hai no Kuni, and the attempted murder of Kazama Uzumaki Naruto, ANBU captain of Konohagakure no Sato in the land of Hai no Kuni. How do you plead? Mizuki growled and lunged at him. Go to hell. Cold blue eyes narrowed. Bad idea, Naruto whispered. He grabbed the hand holding the kunai as it came down at him and pulled, using the man's momentum against him. Mizuki landed rather painfully, and was twisted so he was facing the sky. Before he could move again, he found a kunai pressed against his throat. I'll say it again. Mizuki, you have been charged with treason and 2 counts of attempted murder. How do you plead? Mizuki spit at him. Naruto frowned in disgust and spun the kunai in his hand before slamming the hoop at the end into the side of his neck, knocking the silver-haired man unconscious. He stood, letting the kunai drop and bury in the ground by Mizuki's head, and wiped the spit from his face. Detain him and inform Ibiki that he has a new test subject. 3 ANBUs slid from the trees and landed in front of the blonde. Hi Taicho. They chorused and picked up the body before disappearing in a cloud of smoke. Naruto sighed and turned, locking eyes with Iruka as he did. Time seemed to freeze for a moment as they stared at each other. Finally Naruto let out a growl. Damn it, you weren't supposed to see that. You weren't even supposed to be here. Damn, this is going to cause way too much paperwork. Iruka stared at the boy in front of him in surprise before taking a deep breath and shifting into a sitting position. So I take it you're not an academy student. Naruto stops and turns towards him, his blue eyes seeming tired and dead. No. Irika nodded and stood up, walking forward. Close your eyes, he whispered softly. Naruto stared at him for a minute before relenting and closing his eyes. He could hear the faint rustle of clothes and felt the goggles he wore being pulled off so something smoother, lighter can replace it. He doesn't even have to open his eyes to know what it is. Okay, he heard Irika say. His eyes fluttered open to stare at Irika, who's suddenly missing his headband. He doesn't have to guess to know where it is. A soft, real smile crosses his face as he stares at the third person who's ever bothered to get close to him, the second to do so of his own free will. He takes the steps needed until he can wrap his arms around the older man. Thank you? He steps back after a minute to smile sadly. It's called a report. It's something I should get to work on. Irika nods and smiles himself, before gently escorting the boy to the Hokage's tower. Something tells him it's going to be a long night. The Smiling White Mask of ANBU, Chapter 2. The Beginning of the End. Ill-fated Team 7. Naruto stared at his reflection and slowly shook his head, one hand tugging on the sleeve of his orange jacket. In slight disgust he reached out and grabbed his headband. With a few sharp tugs the headband was wrapped tightly around his forehead. He looked back up and frowned. He couldn't have acted like a prodigy. He just had to pretend to be an idiot. He shook his head and left the clan house. The light of the rising sun reflected of the metal of the headband, his orange jacket open and flapping in the wind. He didn't even realize how early it was until he entered the classroom and found it empty. He shook his head, a soft smile on his face as he slid into his seat. He leaned back, propping his feet up on the desk and crossing his arms over his chest. He stayed like that for a few minutes before sighing and shaking his head. Spying is a crime, you know. He heard a soft chuckle as the shadows shifted and an ANBU stepped forward. The Nico-masked ANBU hopped up onto the desk and settled next to her Taicho's feet. I'd say I feel sorry for you, but I don't. The blonde rolled his eyes. Thanks, Natsuki. I feel a lot better now. Natsuki laughed lightly and shrugged, tilting her mask to the side to reveal pure white eyes and straight black hair. That's what I'm here for. She stared at him for a few minutes before she asked in a quiet tone. Are you okay, Taicho? Naruto looked away, a soft, sad smile on his face. I'm alright. I'm always alright. Natsuki's eyes softened, and she patted the foot closest to her. We're here for you, Taicho. If you ever need us, we're right here. Naruto nodded, keeping his eyes averted. I know. If I need help, he trailed off. Natsuki got the impression that he wouldn't anyways. You're never alone, Naruto. Eyes darker than night looked up at her. Natsuki opened her mouth to say something when the door slid open and Uchiha Sasuke walked in. Naruto smiled widely at the boy, feeling the misplaced air next to him. Natsuki had disappeared long before Sasuke had seen her. Sasuke ignored him. He kept his eyes on the boy as Sasuke took a seat. Once again Naruto found himself cursing the man he'd once freely called his friend. Uchiha Sasuke was cold and closed off from the world, keeping away from anyone who could come to care about him. Naruto knew the reasoning. If someone was close enough to care, then they were close enough to hurt. And so Sasuke had put himself in a self-imposed exile, to walk by society but never with them. It broke a part of Naruto's heart. The other part was frozen to the world. Naruto smiled grimly as other students started to file in. Sasuke and he had both been betrayed by the same person in almost the exact same way. But where Sasuke closed himself off from everyone, Naruto did the exact opposite, clinging to anyone important to him, and protecting them with everything he had. The only person Naruto never tried getting close to was Sasuke, finding it hurt too much to even try to get close. So Sasuke became something of a rival. Naruto stared wide-eyed at the pink-haired girl in front of him from where he lay on the ground. Oh, I am so going to kill the old man for this. He thought. This was going to be great. Are we sure these kids are shinobi? He sighed and stood up, brushing the dust from his jacket. He sighed and slid into the seat next to Sakura, shaking his head. He let his head fall forward to land on the desk. God help Team 7 and give me the strength not to kill them. He stayed like that when the teams were called out and during lunch, ignoring Irika's chuckles. Irika walked forward towards his student who really wasn't his student once everyone had left. Hey Naruto. Naruto let out a soft groan, keeping his head on the desk. Irika grinned. What was that? I can't hear you. Naruto lifted his head and glared at him. I said curse you and whatever demented thought process made you put me on this team. Irika laughed. Naruto sighed and placed his head in his hands. He sat like that, unmoving as Irika's laughter slowly trailed off. He felt Irika's eyes burning a hole in his head and knew he should look up and smile and pretend everything was alright, but it wasn't. Hey Kit. You alright? And don't give me that bull about always being alright. Naruto sighed. Today's their anniversary. There was silence from the link. Naruto, are you alright? Iruka asked. The blonde nodded slowly. I'm alright. I'm always alright. He whispered. He was getting sick and tried pretending, but he just had to get through the day. Naruto stared at the door, feeling bored and tired. He shifted his gaze away to the blackboard and found himself staring at an eraser. Prank ignore? Prank ignore? Prank ignore? Prank. He stood up, walked over, and grabbed the eraser. He ignored his other two teammates as they stared at him. A minute later he had the stupid thing in place and could feel Kakashi's chakra behind the door. He let a snicker when he saw the head of silver hair become encased in chalk dust. That snicker quickly became a laugh when he saw the dull gray eye blinking owlishly at him. Let's see. A prankster, a fangirl, and a brooder. I think I hate you. Let's meet on the roof. So when a minute after the man had left and silence still pervaded the classroom, and no one had moved, Naruto decided he liked the lazy freaking guy. Naruto stared at the man in front of him as he sat on the roof. This'll be good, he thought. Now why don't you introduce yourselves? Likes, dislikes, hobbies, and dreams for the future. Things like that. Sakura bit her lip before asking. Why don't you go first, sensei? Naruto sighed. Couldn't the girl follow a simple order? Oh, me? My name is Hatake Kakashi. I don't feel like telling you my likes and dislikes. My dreams are none of your business. I have lots of hobbies, he trailed off. Okay, we'll start with you on the right. Naruto stared for a minute before deciding he'd throw the man a bone. The guy was once an ANBU. Let's see how long it takes him to figure out I'm not an idiotic genin. I'm Uzumaki Naruto. I like my precious people, protecting my precious people, training, and working on seals. My dislikes are people who hurt my precious people, people who don't try to change their situation by blaming it on fate, people who think they're better than others because of their family, and traitors. My hobbies are hanging out with my precious people, making new seals, and pranks. My dream for the future is to become the Hokage so I can protect this village to the best of my abilities. Everyone stared at the blonde in surprise. When did he get so mature? Sakura and Sasuke thought. Kakashi stared hard at the boy. This was not the attitude the Sandaime had warned him about. It's odd. Every other genin would have said something stupid or selfish, but nothing in that statement showed anything of the sort. A grin slid onto his face. He'll be interesting to watch. Next, Pinky. Naruto grinned when he saw the brief flicker of annoyance in the green eyes before it was covered up. I am Haruno Sakura. My favorite thing is let's move on to my dream. She stopped there, blushing deeply. I hate Naruto. The blonde next to her shook his head, sighing lightly. The girl couldn't have made this easier, just had to make things difficult. Kakashi's sweat dropped. Okay. Next, Mr. Brooder. Sasuke frowned. My name is Uchiha Sasuke. I don't have many likes. I have many dislikes. I don't have a dream, but I do have an ambition. It's to rebuild my clan and to kill a certain man. Naruto stiffened, his eyes widening. Slowly he relaxed, a sad, grim smile shifting onto his face. I should have known. The Sandaime was right. He does need to be protected from himself. He glanced over at the boy, wondering. He knew the darker boy was talking about Itachi and felt glad. There were very few people with the skill to take down Itachi. Only 2 people had the drive to kill him, Sasuke and himself. And Naruto was unsure of the latter. He didn't think he had the heart. Kakashi stared at his students, taking in how they had responded to that statement. He resisted the urge to snort when he saw Sakura staring at Sasuke with a blush on her face. The girl had yet to learn the value of a human life. He almost felt sorry for her. He glanced at Naruto before doing a double take. The blonde had his head bowed, his hands gripping so tightly together that they were white. He could make out what looked like a dark, grief-filled smile on the tanned face. The sight tore into his heart. No child should feel the amount of pain so evident in Naruto's smile. He sighed before straightening and explaining the final exam. Sakura was outraged and Sasuke was indifferent but seemed a bit annoyed while Naruto sat there with a dark smile, no light in his eyes, seeming to stare right past him into the distance. Kakashi wondered if this attitude was normal for the boy. Kakashi stared at his Hokage, faintly annoyed by the amusement he could see on the wizened face. He got the distinct impression that Sarutobi was laughing at him. You called, Hokage-sama? Sarutobi nodded, still staring at him. I wanted to know what you thought of your team. Kakashi nodded, thinking. Well, Naruto's got potential. He's nothing like what you told me to be careful of. Out of all of them, he's the one most likely to pass my test, but I am slightly worried. He seemed lightly out of it today. I'm not too sure about the other two, though. Sakura seems more interested in boys than training, and Sasuke's too focused on revenge. I don't have much hope for this team. The Sandaime looked pensive. Naruto will be better tomorrow. And give the team a chance. They'll surprise you. Kakashi sighed. It was best not to argue with the Sandaime when he got into these moods. Sarutobi chuckled as he watched Kakashi leave the room. I take it that your own test has already started, Kaze-kun? A young figure stepped out of the shadows, face hidden behind a white mask in the shape of a fox. The clock is ticking. The more time it takes, the worse their grade. Which one will call the fox first? The crow, the flower, or the avenger? Each will have their own clues, but apart they're useless. It's time Hataki's teamwork game was turned against him. Sarutobi chuckled. You always loved your riddles, didn't you? The masked head tilted, and the Sandaime could easily imagine the hidden smirk. 3 more masked people appeared. Hokage-sama, you called for us? Sarutobi nodded and gently picked up a scroll, tossing it towards the first. Hi. Team 2, lead by the Kaze Kitsune, I have a mission for you. Kakashi really hated the Sandaime right now. He had to have gotten the weirdest team, ever. And when you think about how messed up his old Genin and Chunin team was, that was saying a lot. Sasuke was indifferent to practically everything, responding only with apathy and anger. Sakura seemed like the normal fangirl, the ones who acted mature but really weren't. But Naruto was a mystery. He was an enigma wrapped in a puzzle, locked in a box where the only key was a riddle hidden in a goddamn maze. Kakashi didn't like riddles or puzzles. They just meant nothing but trouble. So Naruto was going to cause problems, he could already feel it. Naruto grinned at the memory of him and Sakura practically blowing over Kakashi as they screamed at him. He listened with half an ear, thinking back to last night. Natsuki got a broken ankle, but that was it. Looks like this team might be able to survive the curse I hold. Team 7, on the other hand, he smiled dimly at the thought. Kit, they're getting ready? That was the only warning he got before he and his teammates disappeared into the woods. He waited for a moment before taking off and following his darker-haired teammate. Do you think that will work? Kyubi asked. He grinned. Oh yes, just watch the master at work. He waited and watched. 2 minutes later, Sakura's scream echoed through the forest. His sweat dropped. Idiot, Kyubi snickered. Oh, here he comes. Naruto grinned, watching as Sasuke was thrown around a bit. And for a dramatic entrance, we intervene now, he grinned, jumping down. One kunai was stabbed into the ground as he launched a high kick at his teacher's head. He twisted to calculate the fact that he missed and landed easily next to his downed teammate. He grinned. Need help? His efforts were rewarded with a glare. Not from you. Naruto shrugged. Well, if you'd rather deal with him on your own, he stated, making as if to walk away. Wait. He fought the urge to grin. Yes? He asked, turning around to look at the other boy. Sasuke narrowed his eyes. You got a plan? He walked back over, standing beside the boy. He looked at Kakashi, who was staring at them with something akin to approval. Yeah, but you need to trust me. Stay here for a minute. When the time comes, you'll know when to intervene. Sasuke frowned but nodded. Wow, he listened. Naruto grinned. In his mind, even if I betray him, he'll be able to take the bell back from me. He grinned and ran forward, aiming a rough punch at his sensei's stomach. Kakashi dodged and attacked back, keeping one eye on Sasuke. That will be why he will lose, Naruto thought, allowing himself to slide into defense. Kakashi grinned at him under his mask. Not going to fight back, Naruto? The blonde grinned back. But it looks like it will hurt if I lose. He looked down slightly, his grin turning sly. And if I were to win, you think you can beat me? Kakashi asked. Naruto smiled, rocking back on his heels slightly before pushing forward, easily sliding past the man's defenses until he was right next to him. But of course. He looked past the man to where Sasuke was waiting patiently and nodded. The taller boy grinned slightly. Naruto continued past Kakashi, I guess. He finished. Naruto stopped and turned back to the man staring at him with wide eyes. A black blur slid past Kakashi, who now had his entire focus on Naruto. Sasuke appeared next to Naruto and held out his hand, a bell dangling from his finger. Kakashi's eyes widened and he felt for the 2 bells. There was only one. His eyes narrowed, he looked back up at Naruto. The blonde grinned and held up his hand, a kunai hung from his middle finger. Flashback. You think you can beat me? Kakashi asked. Naruto smiled, rocking back on his heels slightly before pushing forward. easily sliding past the man's defenses until he was right next to him. But of course. He looked past the man to where Sasuke was waiting patiently and nodded. The taller boy grinned slightly. Naruto reached out and cut the string on one of the bells before slipping the kunai back into his sleeve. He grinned and continued past Kakashi, I guess. He finished. End flashback. Naruto turned his head and gazed at the boy next to him. That won't work again. You distract, I'll set up the trap. Sasuke nodded and tucked the bell into his pocket before attacking their teacher. Naruto stared at his kunai before throwing it into the ground. He needed 3 more. He pulled out another, and carefully took aim. The kunai sailed past Kakashi, narrowly missing the string of the final bell. Kakashi pulled back and smiled. Close, Naruto, very close. Naruto grinned. It was worth a shot. He stated and charged forward. He battled beside Sasuke for a minute before he pulled a 4th kunai. He made as if to slash Kakashi and let the man knock the kunai from his hand. He grinned when it landed in just the right place. Trying to kill me, Naruto? The blonde grabbed Sasuke and pulled them both back. You should pay better attention, sensei. Naruto pulled out 1 more kunai and channeled chakra into it. It glowed faintly blue before he slammed it into the ground. A blue line of chakra flew through the hoops of the 5 kunai, creating a rough circle with Kakashi in the middle. Kakashi frowned and winced, collapsing to one knee. He looked up slowly at Naruto. What did you do? Naruto walked calmly forward, passing easily through the blue line. He seemed unaffected by whatever he was doing. I said it before, didn't I? I'm good with seals. He reached down and pulled the bell from Kakashi's belt. He walked over to the first kunai he dropped and pulled it up. The circle disappeared and Kakashi let out a long breath. He straightened and looked over at the blonde. Naruto gently unwrapped a paper from around the handle and handed it to his teacher. A seal was scribbled around it. A gravity seal? Kakashi asked, looking up at the blonde. Naruto nodded and smiled. It's considered one of the harder seals, but if you create a small area to cover then it's fine. I'm a bit tried though. He made an act of scrubbing at one eye. Sasuke walked over to them. Why wasn't Naruto affected? Kakashi smiled at the boy. It was Naruto's chakra creating the field. It only makes sense that he'd be a part of the field, able to move freely. Sasuke nodded. A bell rang through the area. Kakashi smiled. Looks like you won. Naruto nodded absently, looking around. Where's Sakura? He asked. There was a rustle in a bush a ways away. The girl stumbled through, blinking up at them. I guess I lost her? Naruto stared at the girl. Don't you dare! Naruto ignored him. Hey, Sakura. He grinned at the girl and tossed her his bell. Eh? Sakura glanced between him and the bell over and over, confused. What are you doing, Naruto? Sasuke asked. He smiled. There you go, Sakura. You win. Sakura looked up at him. But Naruto, without this bell, you can't pass the test. He laughed and turned his head into the breeze, letting it blow through his hair. I failed this test before, Sakura. I can fail one more time. Sasuke looked up at his teacher. Can he do that? Kakashi was staring at the blonde with something that was defiantly approval. How about we eat lunch first, HM? Naruto nodded and started for the area with the lunches. Once they got there, Kakashi rubbed his chin and thought. Well, Naruto, since you gave up your bell, meaning you don't have one, I'll have to give your lunch to Sakura. However, since you did well, I won't tie you up. But you two cannot give him your food. Now, please excuse while I go try and figure out what to do with you. He smiled at them and disappeared with a puff of smoke. They continued to eat in silence for a minute, Naruto lightly humming to himself, before Sasuke handed his food over. Eh? You're going to get into trouble, Naruto stated, in a slightly sing-song manner. Take it. You deserve it. Back when we got the bells you made the plans and did MOT of the work. He looked away. Sakura reached over Naruto and pushed the food away before handing hers to Naruto. No, Sasuke, keep it. You did something, I just fell asleep. I don't deserve to pass this test. Sakura looked over at Naruto when he didn't take the food, ready to yell at him when she noticed his look. He was glancing between them wildly, seemingly with no clue what to do. He looked lost. Naruto, it's okay. Take mine. Naruto looked over at her, and she was surprised to see the confusion and lost dancing in his eyes. Finally, he just bowed his head. No, Sakura, I made my choice when I gave you the bell. I'm not going to go back on. Eat. Sakura looked over at Sasuke, but he too was staring at the blonde in surprise. Naruto was normally a glutton. Naruto, are you alright? Sakura asked. Naruto looked up and smiled widely. I'm alright. I'm always alright. They sat there, staring at each other when Kakashi appeared. You all pass. No one said anything for a minute. Then Naruto uttered a small wah. The Jonin grinned at him. You, Naruto, exceeded my expectations. You have a good sense of teamwork and planning skills. You also contain a measure of self-sacrifice and can accept the consequences of your own actions. That is something few people learn to do. You Sasuke know when the credit is due to someone else, but do not overlook your own efforts. If you had not been distracting me, I would have noticed what Naruto was trying to do. And you Sakura, you convinced me when you tried to give the food to Naruto. Knowing when you did nothing is an important skill because it shows you where you need to work. So you all pass. There was a moment of silence before Sakura let out a shout of joy, throwing herself over Naruto to hug Sasuke. We did it! Naruto grinned before laying one arm over Sakura and looping the other one around Sasuke. Quick, Kakashi-sensei. Take a picture! The older man laughed as Sakura flung Naruto off of her, proceeded to chase him around. By far, you all exceeded my expectations. Good job. The Sandaime smiled at the man sitting behind the mission desk. Why don't you go home, Miraka? Everyone else has. The academy teacher smiled. I'm just finishing up here, sir. Saratobi nodded. Have you heard? Naruto passed his exam with flying colors. Iraka grinned. Yes, I heard. I expected no less. He looked down briefly. Yesterday, Naruto seemed a bit off. Do you know what was wrong with him, sir? Saratobi looked away. Taicho will be fine, Iraka-sensei. A voice stated. Iraka turned and stared as a young man appeared from the shadows. Ink-black hair fell into ice-blue eyes which glowed upon a young boyish face. He looked roughly 16, despite the fact that he was dressed as a Chunin and ANBU mask was atop his head. The Sandaime smiled at the young boy. Iraka, this is Yamato Takako. He's a member of Naruto's team. Takako-san, I believe you've heard of Yamano Iraka. The boy nodded while Iraka blushed. You've heard of me? Takako smirked at him. Oh yes. I think all of ANBU Corps has. The man capable of catching Uzumaki Naruto when not even his own teammates can. Iraka blinked. Takako laughed. It's true. We can't catch him. Don't worry about Taicho, Iraka-sensei. He had a bad day. But he's alright. The young ANBU's smile turned grim. He's always alright. He whispered. He laughed again. If you believe him, that is. Iraka frowned at him. You don't? Takako looked away. I used to. Then I realized he said that every day. Truthfully, I don't think he ever is. Being an ANBU leaves pretty deep scars. But you shouldn't worry. Normally he's pretty good, happy even. But he gets that way every year that day. He'll be fine. Iraka smiled. I think I'll go find him. Takako grinned. You do that, Iraka-sensei. It will make him very happy. The Smiling White Mask of ANBU. Chapter 3, The Mission to Wave. The Power of Memories. Naruto stared dully at the animal squirming in Sakura's arms. Sighing, he walked up and grabbed the cat by its neck and turned it towards him. He stared it in the eye and growled out. Back off. The animal stared at him blankly, loosing his hands. Naruto nodded better. He shifted his grip on the animal until he was wrapping the cat into his arms. He ran his hands through its fur and looked over at his other teammates. He grinned at their shocked looks. It's an animal thing, he stated, grinning in a feral manner. Kakashi chuckled slightly and shook his head in amusement. Well, we've got the cat. Let's go back. Naruto nodded and followed his teacher after giving his teammates a final grin that showed off his overly sharp teeth. Kyubi chuckled in his head. You like messing with their heads, don't you, Kit? He gave a small nod, a wicked grin crossing his face. Oh, you bet. Where else am I supposed to get my amusement? He chuckled, making sure the sound reached his teammates. Sakura and Sasuke jumped slightly and sent him wide-eyed looks. Kakashi, on the other hand, shot him another amused look, showing that he knew what he was trying to do. He merely grinned at him. When they got to the tower, Naruto moved to hand over the cat. It started wiggling in his arms the closer he got to its owner. He frowned and let out a sharp "sh." The cat froze. He nodded in approval and handed it over. Calmly he walked over to the mission's desk and listened with half an ear as the Hokage listened off missions. He was brought out of his daze when Sakura shouted, No! We've done those missions at least twice already. Don't you have something else? Naruto arched an eyebrow. Wow, where did that come from? Iraka stood up and started to lecture Sakura. Saratobi met Naruto's eyes with questioning eyes. The blonde lifted one shoulder slightly in a shrug. The Hokage nodded and picked up a scroll. I might have one. Iruka looked like he was going to protest when he caught Naruto's eye. The ANBU shook his head slightly. He sighed and sat down. Hokage carefully explained the situation to them before beckoning the bridge builder inside. Naruto winkled his nose when he saw the man was drunk. These kids are supposed to protect me? That little kid looks like he could barely take down the other boy. Naruto frowned sharply at the man before smiling brightly. How to survive traveling with Shinobi Rule 1. Never insult the highly trained assassin no matter their age or size. Rule 2. Don't insult the ones assigned to protect you, he stated, grinning darkly at the man. The Hokage shook his head. That's enough, Naruto. Kakashi turned towards his team and shook his head. All right, everyone. Go home and pack for about a week's journey. Meet up at the gate in an hour. Naruto nodded and started to leave the room with his team when Churka shot through the ANBU mark on his arm, making it warm slightly. He didn't stop walking but looked over his shoulder briefly to see the Hokage staring at him intently. He nodded slightly before turning around again. He broke away from his team once he exited the building. After making sure he was far enough, he doubled back and re-entered the building. He quickly made his way to the Hokage's office. He entered and dropped briefly to one knee before rising again. You called, Hokage-sama? Sarutobi nodded and shifted through the notes on his desk. I have reliable intel that there are some very high-profile missing Nins after the man you're now protecting. Naruto blinked and shook his head. He gently rubbed at one ear. Excuse me? I think I misheard you because I'm pretty sure you did not just say that you had given a genin team an assignment that was possibly very deadly, and could probably kill them. Sarutobi smiled softly. I'm afraid that's exactly what I said, Naruto. I'm telling you this so that you can prepare yourself properly. Be careful, Naruto. I want you all to come back alive. All of you. Naruto looked away. No promises, Gigi? He whispered before he turned and walked away. He entered his house silently. Walking through the small portion he actually used, he shredded the clothes he was wearing. In his room he pulled on black cargo pants, a black muscle shirt, and a green jacket with black lining. He reached into his closet and pulled out the pouch containing his seals and attached that to his belt beside his normal pouch. He considered bringing his senbon but decided against it. He was almost out the door when something dark blue caught his eye. He turned and winced when he saw the item lying near the door. He wanted to leave it, he truly did, but he couldn't. He sighed and leaned down, picking it up, and after making sure it's secure in its case left the house. Kit. The QB warned. Naruto nodded. I see it. He whispered. He tightened his grip on the dark blue case and stared hard at the puddle lying on the side of the road. He pushed everything out of his mind and kept his entire focus on the puddle even as he walked past. Seriously, Naruto, what is that thing? Sakura asked when she saw him tighten his grip. They had asked him repeatedly, but he had not answered. Once again the question was ignored. Sakura sighed before turning around in time to see her sensei get torn to pieces. She screamed. Naruto turned, eyes glaring at the men approaching him. He twisted his wrist, causing the case to fall away, and gathered Churka. The Tessin snapped open and, with a sharp lift of the big fan, his enemies were blown away. He snapped it closed and turned his head to the left. Are you alright, sensei? He asked. Kakashi appeared next to him. Very good, Naruto. The blonde nodded and walked forward. He placed one foot on each side of one of the guy's head and stared down at him unblinking. The demon brothers, Chunin level missing Nin. He turned his head and pinned Tizuna with dark blue eyes. I don't like being lied to, he stated. The man started to stutter. Kakashi stepped forward. Unfortunately, Naruto is right. Missing Nins have no need to bother a genin team. But they might have plenty of reason to attack their cargo. Naruto listened as the man started to explain his situation. A part of his heart melted. Kakashi turned back to his team. Well, it's up to you. Do you want to turn back? Naruto examined his team as well. They looked undecided. Sakura even looked scared. He sighed. I don't like being lied to. Especially on something as important as mission rank. However, I refuse to condemn an entire village because of the mistakes of one old man. Kakashi smiled at him in approval. His teammates nodded as they realized he was right. Well, it looks like we continue. They were crossing the river when Sasuke turned towards him in question. What was the weapon you used on the missing Nins? Naruto sighed and slid his weapon over. Sasuke shook the case off and opened the Tessin. He stared at the dark blue material and intertwining dragons printed on it. A fan? He asked, staring at the blonde. Naruto sighed and nodded. It's a Tessin. It used mainly for people with a wind affinity. Kakashi leaned over Sasuke's shoulder and examined the fan. It's pretty old. Why not get a new one? Naruto snatched the weapon back and put it away. It has sentimental value. He didn't say anything else on the subject. Naruto twitched as his senses picked up movement. It's just an animal, Kit. Relax, you're too tense. He frowned and glanced around as a mist rolled in. Something's wrong, he thought, his grip tightening on the Tenzin. His eyes widened. Everyone down! He shouted and grabbed Sakura and pulled her down. A large sword spun over their heads. Naruto looked up with narrowed eyes to see the last person he expected. Zabuza, the demon of the mist. What is he doing here? He thought. Slowly he stood up, keeping his eyes pinned on the figure standing on the sword. Kit, stop. Let Kakashi handle it. Naruto growled but didn't move. He let Kakashi work through the fight and smiled slightly when the man said that he would not allow his comrades to die. But the next minute his was forced to interfere when he felt Zabuza appear behind him. He snapped the Tenzin open and sent a gust of wind at the swordsman. Zabuza moved away and stared at the blonde in suspicion. There was something off about the genin. He seemed almost dangerous. Zabuza shook the thought from his head and moved away when Kakashi took a swing at him. You guys okay? Kakashi shouted. Naruto nodded. We're fine, sensei. He stated, his voice a bare whisper. Kakashi glanced over at his student. Saratobi's words echoed back to him. When Naruto whispers no, it's okay to be scared. In fact, you'd have to be insane not to feel a bit of fear. At the time, Kakashi hadn't known what the Hokage had meant, and had thought the man was joking. But now he could see the reasoning behind the man's advice. Naruto looked dangerous now, with his soft voice containing no infection or emotion and the cold look on his face. For the first time, Kakashi was uncomfortably aware of the fact that the boy was a ninja. That the boy was a killer. And for the first time, Kakashi realized Naruto really could be just that. Naruto watched with a critical eye as the two started fighting again, and knew the minute Kakashi made his fatal error. Idiot! He shouted as his sensei was thrown into the water. He ran forward but was unable to stop the man from being trapped. He slid to a stop and stared at Zabuza with cold blue eyes. He knew that despite all the weapons he could use, his eyes had the most effect. And their power worked again as he felt Zabuza's chakra spike in something that could be seen as warning or worry. He turned and faced the water clone with the same intense blue glare and let the Tenzin fall open. Naruto, no! Just run! Kakashi shouted. Naruto shook his head. No, I refuse. Kakashi's eyes were worried. Naruto, forget your pride. Just go. The blonde shook his head. This isn't pride, Kakashi-sensei. Just like you will not allow a comrade to die, I refuse to lose any more people close to me. Well, what do you think, Kaze-kun? I will not allow Team 7 to befall that curse. I'm sorry, Kaze-kun, I will never allow that to happen again. So just the one survived? He looked up, shaking the memories from his head, and tightened his grip on the Tenzin. Never again. He sent out a large gust of wind before running forward and ducking around the clone. He gathered chakra and launched his attack at the real Zabuza. Kamaitachi no Jutsu. The blades cut through the water at high speed. Zabuza had no choice but to jump away, and Kakashi plunged himself into the water beneath the blades. Naruto took a deep breath and returned his attention to the clone. He jumped away from the sword and shouted towards his team. Help would be highly appreciated. Sasuke ran forward and joined him, seeming to know just when to strike to match his technique to Naruto's own, while Sakura stayed behind to protect Tazuna. Finally, they managed to hit the clone and it exploded into water. Naruto sighed and turned his attention back to his sensei's fight. This would be going so much quicker if I didn't have to hold back. His eyes widened when he felt the amount of chakra being gathered. He stared in wonder as the two released the same jutsu. He winced slightly as Zabuza was slammed into the tree and was about to help when his senses flared out. What's that? He blinked in surprise when 3 needles flew into Zabuza's neck and looked around. He calmed slightly when he noticed the hunter Nin coming towards them. Thank you for your help. The Nin whispered and gently picked up the body. Alarms flared in Naruto's head. He had worked with hunters enough to know their routine, and this situation was breaking the most basic hunter Nin rules he knew. He was about to stop the man when Kakashi interfered. Let them go, Naruto. Naruto stared at Kakashi in confusion. What is going on in that head of yours, Hatake? Kyuubi sighed and Naruto could almost see the great beast shaking its head. Look at him, Naruto. The man's tired and suffering from chakra exhaustion. He probably is too tired to think straight. Naruto sighed but backed down. He turned and placed a hand on his sensei's arm. He stared the man in the eye and nodded. Kakashi smiled and let himself sink into darkness. Naruto sighed and shifted his grip. Sasuke, help him move him. He's exhausted and is going to be out for a while. Sasuke frowned in confusion but moved to help the blonde. Sakura smiled and carefully looked both boys over for injuries before letting the group continue on. Team 7 was slowly starting to trust each other. The smiling white mask of ANBU. Chapter 4: The Mission to Wave. The boys behind the masks. Naruto watched as his sensei slowly awoke. Slowly he helped the man sit up and stared at him with unnerving blue eyes. Kakashi gazed back at his student and wondered where Naruto had obtained the ability to stare like that. Is there something you wish to say, Naruto? The blonde sighed and ran one hand through his hair. I was worried. I sent Sakura and Sasuke to get food and a little rest, but I decided to wait for you. Kakashi smiled. Thank you, Naruto, but you didn't have to. And I'm sorry if I worried you. Now that he was aware of his student's anxiety, he could see all the signs of one who had been tense for entirely too long. Naruto was still a bit tense, and his eyes shifted from side to side every now and then. He looked a little pale and there was something like circles under his eyes. He frowned. Naruto, did you sleep at all while I was out? The boy didn't meet his eyes as he spoke. I wanted to inform you of your error once you had awoken. Kakashi's frown deepened at the swift change of subject. Error? Naruto nodded, keeping his eyes averted. Unless I'm wrong, which I don't think I am, that boy was no hunter. All hunters dispose of the bodies of their prey immediately. However, that boy did no such thing. Kakashi nodded. Naruto had a point. And there is also the dubious choice of weapon. The blonde whispered. Kakashi stiffened. You think Zabuza is still alive? Naruto met his eyes. Think? No, I'm sure of it. The blonde rose to his feet and walked toward the door. I'll go get us both some food. Kakashi nodded before remembering his earlier question. Naruto? You never answered me. Have you slept? Naruto stopped in the open doorway, one hand on the handle, and shook his head. Kakashi stared at his student. Why not? Naruto turned slowly and met his eyes. Kakashi's breath caught at the sight of those normally brightly blue eyes so sad and dark. Naruto looked like he could cry. I was worried. You could easily have died, after all. And here he let out a mirthless chuckle. You're around me. It's only a matter of time. The blonde left, leaving his cryptic words behind. Kakashi watched as his student walked away in sadness and horror. Naruto, do you really believe that? Naruto stood staring up at his teacher with a raised eyebrow and an unimpressed look. Kakashi grinned down at him from where he stood upside down on the tree. Come on, you three, get up the trees. Naruto let out a sharp huff, the air moving his bangs. This is so annoying. I did this when I was 6. Where was his team when he needed them? Oh, that's right. They weren't stuck watching children that had no concept of the real world. Damn them. Damn them to the 7 depths of hell. And the Sandang too. He sighed and quickly raced up the tree. He continued all the way to the top, moving through the branches with practiced ease. He stopped at the top and let the wind blow through his hair, eyes closed in joy. It's the simple things in life. Naruto. He looked down to see his sensei waving at him, beaming. Good job. You can come down now. He nodded and jumped onto the branch beneath him. Taking a deep breath, he let himself fall off. He ignored the shouts this caused and just let himself feel. Right now, he was in his element. His chakra sang in his bloodstream, taking pleasure in being surrounded by his affinity. Brat the ground. Naruto sighed and nodded, flipping around. Chakra was pushed out of his body at a fast rate, causing the wind to engulf him, forming something like a barrier to appear between him and ground. His momentum lessened drastically until he was able to safely put his feet on the ground. It was like stepping off a stair. That was fun, he whispered, brushing off his clothes. Sakura came over and hit him over the head. You baka! I thought you were going to die. Naruto thought she would be funny if she didn't seem so truly frightened. Sakura, relax. I've done that so many times now that it isn't even funny. I was perfectly safe. Sakura bristled. It didn't look that way to me. Her shoulders dropped slightly. Seriously, Naruto. You should warn us before you do something like that. You worry us. Naruto's eyes widened. Kakashi sighed. Naruto, come with me, will you? Sakura, Sasuke, you stay here and work. Sakura, time how long you can stay up. Naruto was slightly reluctant to follow him but knew he didn't have a choice. He sighed and walked slowly behind his teacher. Kakashi glanced back at the boy in worry. Naruto's skills were erratic and his attitude ever-changing. One day he'd seem truly clueless, then the next he'd show a complex understanding of a subject they had yet to even touch. He'd be a fool and an idiot and dance around shouting at the world. Then he'd do a complete 180 and stare into space for minutes and hours on end, always with that too old, too tainted look on his face. Naruto was hiding something, he was sure of it. But first he needed to deal with this. He turned and stared at his student. Naruto, what was that? Naruto shrugged and scuffed one shoe against the ground, his hands in his pockets. Kakashi glared at the boy. Naruto, he warned. The blonde sighed and met his eyes evenly. That was what happens when one applies a sudden amount of chakra containing a wind affinity. It creates a sudden surge of wind, making a barrier or shield. One can pass through it but not without experiencing a change in wind pressure. Kakashi raised an eyebrow. Yep, idiot one day, genius the next. That's not what I meant and you know it. Naruto shrugged again. I don't know what to tell you, sensei. It's just something I like to do. It feels like I'm flying. Kakashi shook his head and kneeled down to Naruto's level. Do you believe what you said earlier? About you being a curse? Naruto looked up at the sky but nodded. Kakashi's eyes softened. Naruto, people aren't going to die just because you're around them. Naruto turned his head and stared at him. Those beautiful blue eyes were sharp, and it seemed like he could see straight to Kakashi's soul. I've never been presented with evidence to the contrary. He whispered and turned away, jumping quickly through the trees. He slowed slightly and let himself slip from the branch. He landed face first in a clearing. Something like that, I wish I could say it. He whispered, his eyes sliding closed. Naruto awoke to the sound of footsteps. He shot up and fingered a kunai, staring at the girl boy whatever standing in the clearing. There was something familiar about the person. His eyes widened and he tightened his grip on the kunai. Slowly, as they continued to stare at each other, Naruto relaxed and sat down, placing the kunai next to him. Hello, Hunter-san. The boy started and glared at him, tightening his grip around the basket. Naruto grinned. We can fight now, but then we'd get tried and bloody and all dirty, and I'm not in the mood for that. Relax. He soothed, making sitting motions with his hands. Slowly the boy relaxed and started to pick herbs, keeping one eye on him at all times. Naruto grinned. What's your name? Haku. Naruto nodded, his grin softening into a smile. Well, Haku, it's a pleasure to meet you. I'm Uzumaki Naruto. Haku straightened and turned towards him fully. You mean, the Kaze Kitsune? Naruto stiffened and glared at the boy. Haku smiled warmly. I recognize your Tessen. That is all. Naruto didn't relax but allowed a smile to cross his face again. I knew I shouldn't have brought that thing. You know, I've spent almost a month now working undercover with the team and they still haven't noticed. Naruto raised his hands and clapped. Haku smiled and gently set down his basket. And what is an ANBU captain doing with a genin team? He shrugged. It's a mission. What can I do? Naruto glanced at the herbs. Is Zabuza alright? I wish I could fight him in earnest, but no, I can't. The blonde frowned. No fair. Haku giggled and sat down still a ways away from him. He is recovering, and I am sure he would share that sentiment if he knew. Naruto tilted his head to the side. He doesn't know? Haku shook his head. I didn't want to tell him until I knew for sure. Haku looked up and met his eyes. Why do you fight, Kitsune-san? Naruto sighed. Even though I bring misfortune, I want to protect them, the people of my village. Haku met his eyes with a curious look. You believe yourself to bring misfortune? The blonde nodded. Everyone I have ever gotten close to has either died or gone insane. My parents, the Uchihos, Team 5, Team 9 Itachi. He sighed. I bring death and chaos and ruin to those I love. I am positive of that fact. Haku stared at him with sad eyes. I do not believe so. I believe you to be a kind and gentle person, Naruto-kun. Naruto laughed. For an ANBU. Haku nodded and giggled. For an ANBU. He stood and grabbed his basket. I should be going, Naruto-kun. It was a pleasure to know the boy behind the mask. Naruto stood as well. I believe that statement to hold true for both of us. Good luck, Haku. Haku nodded and walked away. Naruto sighed as he sat on the roof and stared up at the stars. A kind and gentle person, he repeated. If that's true, then why does everyone always leave me? He asked, curling into himself. But he didn't cry. He had promised himself a long time ago that he would not cry. The Smiling White Mask of ANBU. Chapter 5. The Mission to Wave. Kindness Hurts. Naruto turned his head to the sky and frowned slightly. Something's not right, he thought. He turned to his teacher as they prepared to leave for the bridge. Sensei, I'd like to stay here for the day. Kakashi frowned. Is something wrong? Naruto frowned slightly. I don't know, but something's not sitting well in my gut. I'd like to stay here for the day. Kakashi stared at the blonde for a minute before he nodded. All right. Be careful. Naruto smiled and nodded, walking back into the house. He slid the door closed behind him and leaned back against it. Naomi, he whispered. The shadows flickered and the woman appeared next to him. You rang? She asked. Keep your eye on the perimeter. Something's off. She nodded and disappeared. Naruto pushed off the door and entered the main part of the house. Tsunami looked up as he entered. Is everything all right, Naruto-kun? He smiled widely. Perfect. Just ignore me, he stated. Tsunami nodded as he walked out of the room. Naruto walked through the house, creating a routine that ensured he went in a complete circuit through the house. After he did this 3 times, Tsunami stopped him. Are you sure everything's all right, Naruto-kun? Naruto started to nod when Naomi appeared next to him. Tsunami shrieked slightly. The blonde ignored her and turned his full attention to his summons. Report. Naomi smirked. Trouble, she stated as the door was thrown inward. Naruto sent the woman a dark look. You couldn't have taken care of them yourself? He asked. Naomi shrugged uncaringly. He sighed and reached into his pouch to pull out a seal. Blue Churka gathered around his hand and the Tessin appeared. He sent a glare at the intruders and blasted him with a gust of wind. They flew back. Naruto snapped his fan shut and turned to glare at Naomi. And just why did you find it necessary for me to be the one to take care of them? Naomi shrugged and leaned back on her heels as Inari ran into the room. Naruto smiled slightly at the boy. Everything has been taken care of, Inari. Don't worry, he bit his lips slightly. Sakura and Sasuke won't be able to hold of Haku forever. He looked back at where Inari was staring at the 2 down thugs in amazement. Inari, can you do me a favor? The younger boy turned to look him. Naruto smiled. I need you to watch over your mother for me. Inari's eyes widened. But I can't. Naruto kneeled down so he could look Inari in the eyes. Yes, you can. Earlier you must have been frightened, but you came running as quickly as possible, right? The boy nodded. Naruto smiled. That takes courage, Inari. The ability to not let your fears stop you from acting, to not let them make you second guess, that is strength in and of itself. And that is all the strength you need. Inari grabbed him. But why can't you stay? Naruto ran one hand through the boy's hair. Because right now my team is fighting on the bridge. And their enemies are not like these, they can't be taken out in one hit. They need my help. He stood and pushed the boy into his mother's arms. Naomi, if an enemy attacks, take them out. Don't come and get me. The woman smirked. Of course. He walked to the door. Inari jerked out of Tsunami's embrace. Naruto, wait. I don't know what to do. Naruto stopped. Yes, you do. Don't let your fear or insecurities ever make you doubt that. He turned and smiled softly at the boy. I believe in you, he stated. Haku stared over the group and frowned. Where was Naruto? It's a shame the blonde isn't here. I was looking forward to fighting him. He whispered. Zabuza grinned. That was one interesting kid. He agreed. Sasuke frowned at being ignored. You'll just have to deal with me. Haku nodded briefly and attacked. A few minutes later he was thrown back by the boy's kick. He stood up and listened as Kakashi spoke. I can't have you underestimating my team by calling them brats. Sasuke is the top rookie of his year, Sakura is the brightest shinobi of her age, and Naruto is the #1 most surprising ninja I have ever met. Haku stepped forward. Naruto-kun is the kindest, gentlest boy I met. He whispered, watching as something like pride flashed through the Jonin's eyes. However, I believe that kindness to be the thing that hurts him the most. He looked down. He cares too much, and each time he has been hurt because he cares. But still he puts his heart into the hands of others. Haku shifted, preparing his mirror attack. And yet, the people who hold his heart are not aware of it, and just how fragile it truly is. And so he will just end up being hurt again. The ice mirrors appeared. I'm afraid I myself will be one of the ones to hurt him. I can only take solace in the fact that I will not break him. He looked up and met Sasuke's shocked eyes, and beyond him and the mirrors Sakura's own wide eyes and Kakashi's sad ones. I believe he broke a long time ago. Naruto's eyes widened at the scene he came upon. The entire bridge was covered in mist, and he could make out Sakura and Tazuna, Kakashi and Zabuza fighting, and a large dome of ice. He growled and ran forward. He reached into his pouch and pulled out a kunai, throwing it at Haku. He jumped onto the bridge and smiled sadly at the hunter he knocked down. Hello again, Haku-san. Haku picked himself up. Hello, Naruto-kun. I had hoped that you would show so that I could fight you, but another part of me hoped you wouldn't come because no matter who wins this fight you will be hurt. In more ways than one. And it hurts me to know that I will be the one to cause you that pain. Naruto reached into his pocket and pulled out his fan. I wish you the best of luck, Haku-san. He grinned. You'll need it. Haku's eyes widened and he jumped back inside the mirrors to avoid the blades of wind aimed at him. Come and catch me, Naruto-kun, he said. Naruto growled but found he had no choice other than to join Sasuke within the circle of mirrors. Baka! Sasuke shouted as he stepped next to him. Naruto turned to him and smiled softly. I have faith that everything will turn out all right, he whispered, causing Sasuke to stare at the boy. Haku sighed from within the mirrors. Your kindness was always the thing that hurt you the most, wasn't it, Naruto-kun? Naruto smiled sadly. I'm not kind. I'm cruel, evil. Why else would everyone leave me alone at the end of the day? Naruto turned his head to stare at Haku. Shall we begin? The blonde growled as he was once again forced to step in front of Sasuke and deflect the needles with his Tenzin. Are you alright? He asked. Sasuke nodded but frowned. I can barely keep up. What about you? Naruto smiled harshly. My technique relies heavily on my speed, but even I'm having trouble keeping up. And for once that wasn't a lie. He might be one of the brightest shinobi in Konoha's history. He might be the youngest ANBU ever, but within the circle of mirrors, where Haku could move freely, he found himself hard-pressed to keep up, even if he could follow the boy's movements. He looked over at Sasuke and grinned. How are your eyes? He asked. Sasuke blinked. What's with the random questions, dumbass? Naruto frowned and pushed Sasuke and himself out of the way of the Senbon. You're an Uchiha, right? You have the Sharingan. So I ask again, how are your eyes? Sasuke winced. I don't have the Sharingan yet. Naruto sighed and moved quickly. He placed a hand on the boy's shoulder and pressed himself against his back so he could whisper directly into Sasuke's ear. Stop. It's not that hard. Forget everything else. Want only to use the Sharingan with all your heart. Want only that. Sasuke's eyes widened and then slowly slid closed. Want only that. When Sasuke's eyes slid back open, they were the bright, angry red of the Sharingan. Good. Naruto whispered. Now move! He pushed the boy away as Senbon flew towards him. Sasuke stumbled briefly before spinning around and watching the Senbon impact the blonde. Naruto! He shouted. He growled and launched a kunai at one mirror. If he's dead, if he died because he was busy telling me how to activate the Sharingan. He couldn't finish the thought. He couldn't even imagine a life where Naruto wasn't bouncing around, acting like an idiot, and annoying them so much, but was still there at the end of the day with wise words and kind smiles and an outstretched hand. He didn't want to. Being able to shout at the boy and yet still be able to lean on him if he needed to. Being able to go all out in a spar knowing that Naruto could handle it. It was something he would miss terribly. He couldn't bear the thought. Sasuke realized that the boy had wormed into his heart and was not coming out. Naruto pushed himself up and pulled a Senbon out off his arm. Enough with this pain crap, brat. Naruto smiled slightly. At least I got Sasuke to activate his Sharingan. Kyuubi growled. That's no excuse. He ignored the demon and looked around, spotting Sasuke. Sasuke! Good job with the Sharingan. Sasuke paused and turned to look at Naruto. The tension seemed to drain from his body. Thank God. He whispered. He looked up and smirked. Baka, you had me worried. Naruto smiled. Slowly he stood up and grinned at the boy. You're good, Haku-san. It appears I underestimated your speed. He reached down and picked up the Tenzin he dropped. But you underestimated me as well. I did not gain the name Kaze Kitsune for nothing. The wind shifted and exploded outward from his body. I cannot afford to keep up my mask in this fight. Not even if Sasuke is watching. He raised his hand and let the Tenzin slid open, covering one half of his face. His blue eyes opened and pierced right through Haku. Because my teammates mean the world to me, I would give my life for them. He twisted his hand and sent a blast at Haku. While one hand wielded the Tenzin, his other hand moved quickly, writing out seals and chirka. I don't have much time. He'll figure a way around it soon. He activated the seal and the Tenzin in his hand glowed and started to float, spinning in a circle wildly. A barrier of wind surrounded the two and he hurried over to Sasuke, hands flying through seals. We don't have much time. If we're going to win this fight, I need you in top condition. Don't do anything stupid," Naruto stated, dropping down next to the boy. One hand pulled the Senbon out as quickly as possible without harming the boy while the other brushed over the wounds, healing chakra flowing from his hands. Sasuke stared at the boy as he worked diligently. Why isn't he healing himself as well? He glanced around, trying to find Haku. The boy seemed to be everywhere, throwing Senbon at the wind. They just got caught in the current, and were pushed to the ground. He relaxed slightly, then movement caught his eye and he looked back up. Haku had stepped outside the mirrors and was gathering ice in his hand. The hunter threw it at the wind and, although the wind tussled it slightly, it flew through. His eyes widened and he glanced hurriedly at Naruto. The blonde had his entire attention focused on healing. He didn't even notice. Time seemed to freeze as thoughts flew through Sasuke's head. Then he remembered the sick feeling he'd had when he thought Naruto had died to teach him the Sharingan. That was really all it took. Naruto's eyes widened as Sasuke slipped from his hands and seemed to disappear. Slowly he turned and stared over his shoulder to see Sasuke standing protectively in front of him. "Why?" he breathed out. Sasuke turned his head and stared at him with dull eyes. "I thought you died earlier. I kept trying to see a world where you were dead and I couldn't stand it. The thought made me sick. That's why I just moved," he whispered, falling backwards. Naruto caught him and slowly lowered him to the ground. The blonde didn't seem to see anything, eyes staring blankly in front of him. "I'm not worth this," he whispered, one tear falling down his cheek. "I was never worth this." His grip tightened briefly on the non-breathing body in his hands. Slowly Naruto set the boy on the ground and stood up. His head was bowed as he spoke. "I don't care about my own life. I stopped caring a long time ago. But the lives of my friends," the waver in his voice stopped and grew cold and harsh and without feeling. "They mean the world to me." He looked up and Haku found himself pinned in place by bright blue eyes. Naruto growled. "Kyubi, I haven't asked this of you in a long time, but I need you chakra." Kyubi nodded slightly and sent out his chakra. Thick red chakra poured from Naruto's body in waves. The mirrors shook under the pressure. Haku stared at the boy. "He's changed. That boy I met in the clearing is gone. This is the true ANBU captain." Haku tried to get away but found himself thrown back and out of the mirror the minute he tried. He looked up and backed rapidly away from the fists flying at him. He quickly found himself slowing down, barely able to keep up. Finally a hit connected and he crashed to the floor. "I'm sorry, Zabuza-san. I couldn't stop him. He's too dear to me." Naruto placed a kunai against Haku's neck and pressed down. But he found himself unable to break the skin and killed the hunter. Haku met his eyes, his mask gone. "Why did you stop?" "I killed one of your precious people." "Why stop?" Naruto bit his lip and looked away. He slowly brought the kunai away from the boy's throat and stood up, backing away from him. Because you two are one of my precious people," he whispered. Haku pushed himself into a sitting position. "I knew that no matter who won this battle I would hurt you. I would either win and kill the people you care about or lose and die. No matter what happened you'd still cry, wouldn't you?" Naruto turned his head. "Your kindness was always the thing that hurt you the most. And yet you cared and cared and cared," Haku whispered. "That's why I'm sure you'll understand. I stay with Zabuza-san because he took me in when no one else would. Even though I was just his weapon, he let me stand by his side. That made me so happy." He smiled sadly, a tear rolling down his cheek. "But I'm only good to him as a weapon. If I start to care about my enemy so easily, then I am useless to him. That's why please kill me, Naruto-kun." Naruto let out a shaky breath. "I can't," he whispered. Suddenly the sound of birds filled the air. Naruto looked up, eyes wide. "The Chidori?" he whispered. Haku frowned and disappeared. Naruto's eyes widened and he looked around. He wouldn't. He thought, but he started running anyway. "Please let me be wrong," he prayed. His wishes were never granted. Naruto stared in horror at the scene in front of him. Kakashi had his hand through Haku's chest. "Haku," he whispered, feeling his heart break. He watched as Zabuza tried to cut through both of them, and barely stopped himself from running to his sensei so that he could look at Haku. But he knew with all his heart, that the boy was dead. He had lost another precious person. "Naruto!" He turned and stared at Sakura as she approached. "Are you okay? Where's Sasuke?" Naruto bit his lip and was steeling himself to tell her when it hit him. "To care about my enemy so easily, there's also the dubious choice of weapon." Naruto's eyes widened and tears filled his eyes. "He's all right," he whispered. The blonde started to laugh weakly. He's really alright. I just got so scared and terrified and angry. I didn't stop to think about it. That idiot's alive. Sakura smiled. That's good. Naruto nodded, one hand brushing his tears away. Yeah, that's good. He whispered. Naruto froze when Naomi appeared beside him. He's here, she stated. Naruto nodded and dried his eyes, turning to look at where Gata's army of thugs had gathered. Get ready, Sakura-chan, he stated and walked over to his teacher. Kakashi sent a confused glance at Naomi but turned his attention back to Gato as he started talking. Naruto's eyes widened as he watched the man approach Haku and grind his cane into the boy's cheek. You bastard! He shouted, running forward. Kakashi grabbed his collar and dragged him back. Are you insane? Look at their numbers. Naruto growled and jerked from Kakashi's hold, turning to Zabuza. Aren't going to do something? He was your friend, wasn't he? Zabuza didn't look at him as he replied. Haku was a tool to me. Nothing more. That's all shinobi are. Tools for someone to use. Naruto's eyes widened. That's not true. At the end of the day, when the missions are over, a shinobi is still just a human being. Haku cared about you. He loved you so much. He gave his life for you. Does that mean nothing? I don't think even you are that heartless, Zabuza. He shouted and then turned his head away. Even though I barely knew him, even though he was my enemy, he so quickly became someone precious to me. He whispered, tears gathering in his eyes. Kid, you don't need to say any more. He looked back up and was surprised to see tears pouring down Zabuza's cheeks. Naruto watched as Zabuza started to tear through the bindings around his mouth. Hey kid, can I borrow a kunai? Naruto nodded and reached into his pouch. Sure, if you let them stop you, I'll have to kill you myself. Zabuza grinned at the boy, and then he ran and tore through the enemies, fighting to Gato, not letting even the swords in his back stop him. Naruto relaxed slightly when he saw Gato get taken down. Naruto! He turned slightly and smiled when he saw Sasuke standing, although he had to lean on Sakura, and waving at him. He's alive! Sakura shouted. Naruto felt tears gathering again. Yeah. He took a deep breath and turned towards them fully. You idiot! Didn't I tell you not to do anything stupid? Sasuke smirked at him. I'm the idiot? For a minute in there you had actually convinced me you might have a brain, then you get so wrapped up in something you completely forget about the enemy. Naruto laughed. Hey! You're entirely too relaxed? Naruto tensed and turned back to the army of thugs. Naruto twitched slightly. Naomi, what did I say to you not even half an hour ago? The woman grinned and leaned back on her heels. To take care of the enemy when I find them. Don't come and get you to do it. Naruto nodded. Yes, that's it exactly. Then what do you call that? He asked, pointing to the group. Naomi snickered. The army ran forward. An arrow landed in the ground, causing them to pause. Naruto turned slightly and smiled at Inari. See, I knew you could do it. The boy grinned at him before turning his attention back to the group. This is our village. You want to ruin it, you'll have to try to get through us. Naruto watched as they ran away. Nice, very nice. He whispered. His amusement was cut short when he noticed Kakashi slowly carrying Zabuza back to Haku. A drop of snow hit his cheek. It's snowing? He asked, raising one hand as if to catch a snowflake. Haku, is this your way of crying? Naomi slipped one hand around his shoulders. It always pained me that the one thing I could never protect you from was from yourself. She whispered, gently wrapping him in a hug. Because you care so much. But if you didn't, you wouldn't be Naruto-sama. Kakashi, Sakura, and Sasuke hiked up the hill to where they had buried Haku and Zabuza. Kakashi sighed. I thought so, he whispered, staring at the boys standing quietly in front of the graves. Sakura stepped forward and reached out a hand to the blonde. Naruto, she called. Naruto's shoulders started to shake. I said a long time ago that I wouldn't cry anymore. No matter how many people I loved died, no matter how much I hurt, I wouldn't cry. Even so, he tilted his head to the sky, tears pouring from his eyes. Even so, I can't make these tears stop. He sobbed. Sakura bit her lip and ran forward, hugging the blonde from behind. Kakashi walked forward slowly, burying one hand into the boy's hair as Sasuke stepped up onto Naruto's other side. It appears that Haku was right. Your kindness was always the thing that hurt you the most. You gave your heart to people and yet they didn't know they had it, nor did they know how fragile it was. Haku, and even Zabuza, had no idea that they could hurt so much. Naruto's body shook within their embrace. I knew them for such a short time, but they grew to be so precious to me. Sakura buried her head into Naruto's shoulder. But no matter how many times you get hurt, no matter how much your heart is torn to shreds, you keep caring. Because you don't want to let go of the hope that eventually someone will be there the next day, waiting for you. Kakashi whispered. Team 7 watched as Naruto talked easily with the villagers, saying his goodbyes. Naruto kneeled down in front of Inari and smiled softly. When you say goodbye, it's okay to let yourself cry, he told him. Inari tackled him, nearly knocking him over. Naruto sighed and ran his hands through Inari's hair. Shh, it's alright. Shh. Slowly Inari backed away from the boy and offered him a watery smile. Bye, he whispered. Naruto smiled and cupped the boy's face, wiping away his tears. Never let your fears make stop. Never let them make you hesitate or second guess. Because that is strength in and of itself. And that is all the strength one needs. Inari nodded, tears pouring down his face. Sasuke sighed as he watched the two. In that fight, Naruto taught me how to activate the Sharingan, he whispered, one hand hovering over his eyes. Kakashi and Sakura looked over at him. But then he pushed me out of the way of one of Haku's attacks and got hit himself. And all I could think was that he was dead, that he died teaching me something I could have learned another time, off the battlefield. I tried to see a world where Naruto was gone, where he wasn't laughing and goofing off, where he wasn't there to smile. The mere thought, it made me ill. Kakashi smiled and nodded. That's Naruto's greatest strength. He gets into your heart, and he doesn't come out. He heals your heart, even though his is still broken. Even though he breaks so easily, he gets up the next day and smiles. He tries to help. Lesser men would have given up a long time ago. Sakura nodded but didn't smile. But a part of me can't help but wonder. The boy behind the mask, what's he like? She whispered. Kakashi shrugged. I don't know. I guess all we can really do is stand by his side and hope he lets us heal him. But I'm staring to realize that Naruto is not what he appears. He has so many layers and puzzles and riddles that it's hard to see where the lies stop and he really begins. I wonder if he even knows himself. He sighed and called, Naruto, you done? We've got to go. The blonde turned to him and smiled. Yeah. He glanced down at Inari. Bye-bye, Kit. Naruto twitched slightly. You've been oddly silent. What's wrong? The QB sighed and Naruto could almost feel its glare. My memory might be wrong, but I believe we agreed that we wouldn't let ourselves die for no reason. Naruto frowned. Yes. I remember that. Why bring it up now? Because I was going over that battle and I realized there was no way you couldn't have known those Saban were coming. You knew you were going to get hit. Naruto winced slightly. If I had moved, then Sasuke would have gotten hurt. And there is no way I could allow that to happen. Naruto, that's no excuse. Naruto stopped walking, causing his teammates to turn to him. Naruto? Yes, it is. He looked and stared Sasuke in the eye. Never do that again. He whispered coldly. The Uchiha frowned. Do what? Naruto glared and walked forward until he was right in front of the boy. What you did in that fight, jumping in the way of the attack, never do that again. Never put my life above your own. I'm not worth it, he stated before he turned and kept walking. Sasuke glared at the boy's back. Where do you get off saying something like that? He snapped. Naruto didn't look back as he answered, keeping his gaze right in front of him. If you die, Sasuke, then people will cry. If I was to die, no one would feel sorrow, or pain, or sadness. No one would cry. Some might even feel happy. His hand formed a fist tight enough to break the skin and draw blood. And so, never do that again. His team watched as he walked away. That's not true, Sasuke whispered. I'd cry. Sakura finished. Kakashi stared after his student. Naruto, you really believe that, don't you? You have yourself so convinced that your life is worthless that you think others must believe that too. Does your life truly mean nothing to you? The Smiling White Mask of ANBU, Chapter 6, The Chunin Exam. And so it begins. Naruto sighed as he walked to the bridge. He looked around slowly, fingering the letter in his pocket. Not here yet, sensei? He asked dully. Sakura looked up in surprise. Naruto? Is something wrong? Naruto turned his head and stared at her blankly. Didn't sleep long enough, he muttered. He looked back up at her. Sakura, when sensei come, give this to him for me, he stated, holding out the letter. The girl blinked but nodded and took the letter. This is from the Hokage. Naruto? Sakura looked back up but the blonde was gone. Weird, she whispered. She turned to Sasuke. What do you think? Naruto yawned and stretched, walking into ANBU headquarters. Yo! He whispered to his team as he approached, collapsing on the couch next to Natsuki. The Hyuga smiled softly, running her fingers through his hair. Tired, Taicho? She asked. Naruto groaned. Why does he do this to me? What cosmic deity did I piss off in a past life? He whined. Natsuki smiled. Ah, you have things so hard. She whispered. Takako grinned. Oh yes. During the day he's a mere genin, nothing special, simple missions that don't leave the village. But at night he's the top ANBU, a captain, a genius, risking his life every night so that the rest of us can sleep soundly. And then he gets up 3 hours later to do it all over again. Natsuki scowled and swiped at the boy with her free hand. Goofball. How you became an ANBU I'll never understand. Especially at your age. Takako stuck his tongue out at her. The pure white eyes narrowed. That will be back in your mouth in 5 seconds or something much more precious will be lost. She whispered. Takako gulped and ducked behind the couch. Naruto laughed slightly. Takako, he whispered fondly, don't ever change. He muttered. But everyone could hear the words he hadn't spoken. Don't ever leave, Takako grinned. Don't plan to. He chirped. The boy blinked as a moment later an ANBU mask was dropped on his head. He blinked and pulled it off, staring at the image of a tiger. He grinned and looked up. Welcome back, Haku. The final member of Team 2 stared down at the boy with dark brown eyes. Keiko. He muttered affectedly. He turned his head and stared at the blonde. Sorry, Taicho, but you need to get up. The Hokage is about to speak with the Jonin senseis. Naruto grumbled but stood up. Yeah. I'm going. He turned his head and smiled at his team. See you later. He whispered. Naruto sat in the shadows, his ANBU mask in place and decked in dark colors that weren't exactly the ANBU uniform. He sighed and looked at the Jonin gathered in the room. They didn't even know he was here. He watched as the meeting continued. He sighed when at the end Irika started to protest. Have a little faith, Yumino-sensei. He whispered softly. Everyone jumped at the sound of his voice and turned to look at him. Irika's eyes widened when he noticed the mask. What? He asked. Sarutobi smiled softly at the boy. Hello, Kaze-kun. Enjoying the meeting? He asked. Naruto smirked behind the mask when he noticed several of the Jonin stiffen at his title. Oh yes. It's very entertaining. He turned his head towards Irika and nodded to the Chunin. Have faith, Yumino-sensei. I think someone's watching over them. Irika snorted softly in amusement when he caught the reference, and nodded, smiling. All right. Whatever you say, Kitsun Taicho. Naruto grinned behind his mask. Just remember, words are a person's strongest bond. The more we say something, the more likely it is to happen. Naruto ran full speed to the bridge. Maybe if he hurried he could beat Kakashi. He didn't think he would. The man had a 5-minute head start. But still, at least Sakura still had that letter saying the Hokage needed him for the day. He skidded to a stop, nearly tumbling over the railing when he made it. Slowly he relaxed, letting out a long breath. He turned when he heard giggling behind him. Sakura was trying to muffle her laughter, Sasuke was smirking at him, and Kakashi was staring at him in amusement. Welcome back, Naruto. Kakashi greeted. Naruto blanched. I can explain, he shouted. Kakashi held up the letter he'd given to Sakura. He relaxed. Oh. He whispered. Kakashi smiled at him and pocketed the note, pulling out another letter. This is for the Chunin exam coming up. Naruto listened with half an ear as the man went on to explain the test. The blonde stretched as he left, talking quickly about the exam. Even though he kept talking, his eyes slid to a perfectly square rock that was following him. He sighed. I wonder if any of the other genin from our year will be there. I mean, we can't be the only new genin trying. And rocks are either square nor do they move, Konohamaru. He watched with amusement as the illusion was dropped and the academy students walked towards him. Naruto smiled, ignoring the majority of what they were saying. He sighed when Sakura came up and started to berate them. Play ninja? How can you play ninja when you are a ninja? She shrieked. Naruto winced slightly before his eyes widened when Konohamaru insulted her. He's dead. Kyubi stated in amusement. Kono-kun, I would run if I were you. He muttered. He watched as the boy ran away and disappeared into the shadows, following them casually. The blonde's eyes widened when he heard the boy's scream. He jumped down from his perch and reappeared next to Sakura. Put the boy down. He whispered dangerously. The Sunanin smirked at him. Make me. Naruto glared at the boy. You should listen to the girl, Suna-san. She has a point. The wind started to rip around his form. My friend is very displeased, he whispered. The boy froze when a kusarigama was pressed against his throat. Naruto kneeled down and held out his arms when Konohamaru was released. The boy ran into them. Are you alright? He asked. Konohamaru nodded shakily. Naruto slowly looked up, blue eyes icy. Don't touch my precious people, he whispered. Naomi slowly walked out from behind the Sunanin, her blade held out in front of her. She looked over her shoulder at Naruto and grinned. The Uchiha seems less than happy with you. I think you stole his spotlight, she stated, nodding her head at where the boy was glaring at them from a tree. Naruto stood and smiled at the boy. Hey! He shouted. He stiffened when he suddenly sensed a large amount of churka wash over the area. You're a disgrace to Sunanins and the family, Kankuro. Naruto stiffened and turned to stare at the redhead hanging upside down from a tree branch. Who? Naomi stepped up next to him. I don't like the feel of that guy, she whispered. Naruto nodded. Inform Natsuki that I want her to watch the group of Sunagenin that came for the Chunin exam. The one with the redhead. The illusion fox nodded and disappeared. The blonde watched as the redhead walked away. What's your name? He asked. The boy stopped briefly and turned to look at him. I am interested in yours as well, he whispered. Naruto smiled humorlessly. Naruto, Uzumaki Naruto. The redhead nodded. Gaara, he stated, before he turned around and left. Naruto watched him walk away. Those eyes, he frowned. The eyes of a murderer, he whispered. His teammates looked over at him in surprise. Eh? Naruto's eyes narrowed. I have a very bad feeling. Naruto hopped around in front of the school. Oh come on, Sakura, he whined. He tugged at the sleeve of his jacket, pulling it down over the holster for one of his tessen. He knew he made quite the image considering how he normally dressed. He was wearing a dark green jacket over a black muscle shirt and dark green cargo pants. The holster for his larger tessen was hidden under his jacket, and the top of its case was visible over one shoulder. He also had all his gear on, the senbon and poisons and seals strapped to his legs and waist. Sasuke sighed and glared at the boy. Will you stop? He growled. Naruto shot him an apologetic look before he turned his head and saw Sakura walking slowly towards them. Yo, Sakura! He shouted. She stopped in front of them and offered a weak smile. Naruto stared at her for a minute before he sighed. Everything will be alright, he stated confidently. Sakura looked over at him. Eh? Naruto met her eyes evenly. Words are a human's strongest bond. The more we say something, the more likely it is that it is true. That's why, he smiled softly. I am absolutely sure everything will be alright. Naruto smiled softly as he watched Sasuke take down the boys holding the illusion in place, and then Sakura explain it. He was impressed. His team was slowly growing up. He walked to the room with his team when a boy stopped them. Naruto watched in amusement as the boy tried to woo Sakura. Rock Lee. Naruto shook his head as he stood by the side watching the fight. He was not going to interfere. He sighed when Lee-sensei stepped in, yelling at the boy. All the same, he clapped. The two stopped and stared at him. He smiled at the two. Very impressive, Lee-san. You're very fast. He smirked at the boy. I hope I get the chance to fight you when you're not weighed down. He turned his head to his teammates. We need to go now. This idiot is going to make us late, he stated, jerking a thumb at Sasuke. The Uchiha glared at him. I'm the idiot dead last? He asked. Naruto turned to him and smiled blindly. Yep, he chirped. He waved at the two dressed in green. It was nice to meet you, Rock Lee-san, Madogai-sensei. He walked away. Sakura hurried up to him after they'd left the two. What do you mean, weighted down? She asked. Naruto smiled. That boy was wearing weights. A lot of weights. He waved a hand dismissively, turning so he was walking backwards. It's a really old training method, but it's very effective if you're trying to increase your speed. However, some would argue that it's bad for one's bones to be under pressure when you're still growing. He stopped and looked over his shoulder. Ah, Kakashi-sensei! He shouted, running towards the man. It's alright. Sakura decided to come all on her own, he stated. The man smiled warmly at him. That's good. Now we can take the test properly. Sakura blinked. Eh? What do you mean? Kakashi smiled. In truth, the test needs to be taken by team of 3. If one of you hadn't come, you wouldn't have been able to take the test. Sakura gasped. But you said it was an individual choice, did you lie? Naruto turned his head and stared at her. No, he didn't lie. You could have chosen not to come even though it might have stopped us. That makes it a personal choice. He didn't tell you so you wouldn't feel pressured into coming. Kakashi smiled at him. You knew? Since when? The blonde grinned. I knew from the very beginning. But I didn't want to make her worry. Kakashi nodded. I'm proud of you, Naruto. Naruto smiled softly. I'm absolutely sure everything will be okay. He stated again. His two teammates smiled. Yeah. Sakura whispered. Let's go. The Smiling White Mask of ANBU. Chapter 7 The Chunin Exams. The first exam. Naruto walked into the room, easily matching his teammates' steps. He stopped when he felt them pause and looked over the vast amount of people gathered in the room. He whistled. Now, that's impressive. He stated, staring at the large group of people gathered into the room. He tensed as he felt someone approach from behind. Arms were thrown over Sasuke's neck. Sasuke-kun! Naruto shook his head when he saw Ino. He stepped back slightly to get out of the range of fire when Ino and Sakura started to argue. He shook his head. Figures. We're standing in a room filled with genin from almost every hidden village whose must-kill-everyone mindset is on a hair trigger, and they're arguing over a boy who doesn't even like them. He stepped forward and placed his hands between the two girls. Ladies, enough? He said. Shikamaru approached him. Why even bother? It's too troublesome. Naruto smiled at him, and opened his mouth to reply when teammate came over. So all 9 of this year's genin showed up, eh? I wonder which one of us will win. Sasuke smirked at the boy. You seem confident, Kiba. Naruto growled and threw his arms up. Will you all shut up? He snapped. Kiba glared at him. And why should we dead last? The dog boy asked. Naruto frowned and gently fingered the string that would release the small Tessen strapped to his wrist. Because I'm trying not to get us all killed. Or haven't you noticed yet? We're being glared at. He informed, jerking his head in the direction of the other genins. You shoulder listen to him. Naruto twisted his head and stared at the man approaching the group. And you are? He asked. The silver-haired man smiled at him. Kabuto, it's a pleasure to meet you. Naruto nodded, filling away the information and stepped back from the conversation, letting it flow around. You're not going to do anything? Naruto shook his head minutely. Not yet. There's no need to interfere yet. Kyuubi nodded and retreated to the back of his head. Naruto's eyes widened as he stared at the cards. Something like that something's not right, he thought, glaring at the cards. He tensed when Sasuke stepped forward, Gaara of the Hidden Sand and Rock Lee of the Leaf. He stated. Naruto frowned, listening to the results for Gaara but holding up a hand to stop Lee's. Stop, he stated, voice clear and powerful. Kabuto looked up in question. Naruto glared at the man. As a fellow ninja of the Leaf, I'm afraid I cannot allow you to just tell information about another member of my village, especially when people outside the village are listening. And as one who's taken this test so many times before, you should know better than that. Sakura glared at him. Naruto, stop it. He's just trying to help. Naruto turned an icy gaze onto his teammate. Something like that is paramount to treason. Treason is punishable by the death penalty, Sakura. And by just standing here and letting him to it, even provoking him, he stated, looking over at Sasuke, we can also be found guilty of the same crime. He looked back at Kabuto. And so, please watch your tongue. There was a tense silence in the group as they digested Naruto's words. Naruto's muscles tensed as he felt chakra being gathered and he released the trigger, the Tessen falling easily into his palm. He turned his head, chakra gathering for a quick blast of wind. He relaxed as he saw the Konoha standing at the front of the stage. He shifted, listening to the instructions before moving to the front for his seat number. As he moved, he secreted the Tessen back into its holster. He looked Ibiki in the eyes as he turned to move to his seat and smiled warmly. Ibiki nodded in acknowledgement and mouthed Kaze-san. Naruto sat down and smiled softly at the girl sitting next to him. Hello, Hinata-san? He whispered. Hinata glanced over at him with a blush. And Naruto-kun? He whispered. The blonde smiled softly. Let's do our best, Hinata-san. Hinata's eyes widened before she nodded, her blush deepening. Okay, listen up, here are the rules. Ibiki stated. Naruto turned his attention back to the man. Once given the word, he flipped the paper over and let high eyes roam over it, casually filling in the answers. Once it's finished, he flipped it back over and leaned forward, resting his forehead in his arms. He stayed like that for a while before growing bored and started to doodle on the back of the page. He was no artist, If they needed a picture, they asked Natsuki, but he could do enough to entertain himself. By the time the bell rung, he had filled the entire back side with long black spirals. He sighed and signed the bottom corner before turning his attention back to Ibiki. His eyebrows shot up in surprise as he listened to the rules for the final question. Way to go, Ibiki, he thought. Scare them out. Sure-proof plan. He sighed and was going to drop his head back into his arms when the QB spoke. Brat the girl. Naruto frowned and straightened. He turned and sought out his teammates out with his eyes. He noticed Sakura slowly raising her arm. Sakura, he called, watching as the girl jerked and looked up at him. He smiled softly, knowing every eye was on him. Do you remember what I told Inari? He asked, watching as an almost memory flashed behind the girl's eyes. He continued, knowing more than one person in the room needed to hear it. The ability to not let your fear stop you, to not let it make you hesitate or second guess, that is a strength in and of itself. And that is the all-strength one needs. He watched as comprehension dawned on Sakura's face, and her hand hit the desk with a resounding thump. She smiled, sure of herself now. I am absolutely sure that everything will be alright. She repeated Naruto's earlier words. Naruto nodded, smiling widely. Yep, and as long as you believe that with all your heart it will be, he stated. Sakura and Sasuke smiled and relaxed. Neither would be leaving. Ibiki watched it all with a smile. No one else? He asked. All right then. You all pass. Naruto grinned as screams of outrage filled the room. He leaned back, closing his eyes. He knew the minute Ibiki took off his headband. He opened one eye and stared at the man, as if silently asking, is that necessary? His answer was a grin. Naruto sighed and let his eyes fall shut again. He frowned as he felt the Churka fast approaching. He sat up, watching as Anko crashed through the window. Okay, I know that wasn't necessary, he thought, hearing Kyubi chuckle in the back of his mind. He stood and followed the woman out as ordered, shaking his head in amusement. He gave a good-natured salute to Ibiki as they left. Ibiki chuckled and shook his head, turning away. Naruto took a deep breath and left the room. Now comes the hard part, he thought, fingering the trigger again. Ibiki walked forward and picked up Naruto's test. He chuckled as he turned it over, staring at the message written in the corner. Ibiki! Good to see you again. Still giving people heart attacks just by looking at them? Try not to do that to any of the genin. Kaze Kitsune, he smiled fondly. He really is special, he stated, turning his head to stare at the man sitting in the corner. The man stood up, the sun glinting off graying hair and dark brown eyes glinting. Yes. Unfortunately, Taicho has no idea the effect he has on people. He doesn't see the impression he leaves, how he changes people. I don't really think he ever will. There's too much emotional trauma for him to ever really see the value of his own existence. It's a shame. He's so young, Ibiki nodded. I know most people in the ANBU wonder what he would have been like if Team 5 hadn't died. But there is nothing we can do about it now, at Kahaku-san? Kahaku nodded and looked out the window. Everything changes. Nothing changes back. That's what Taicho taught me. But still, I'd like to see him smile for real. He whispered. The Smiling White Mask of ANBU, Chapter 8, The Chunin Exams, Forest of Death. Naruto stared up at the tree-covered sky with a frown. We'll go from above, he said to his teammates. Sakura frowned at him. Why? She asked. Naruto smiled at her softly. Because, dear Sakura-chan, the one place a person almost never looks is up. When was the last time you looked towards the sky for an enemy? The girl thought about it for a minute before she jumped up into the cover of the trees. The blonde watched as Sasuke followed her up and took a deep breath. Separate, he ordered to the empty area around him. Find me a few scrolls, girls. 4 shadows darted off into different directions. Naruto sighed and jumped up. Time to get to work. Naruto looked down as he felt a large amount of chakra ahead of him. He held up a hand to stop his teammates and looked around. Naruto, what's wrong? Sakura whispered. He frowned at the girl and made a shushing motion. He looked around again. Q, you feel that? The demon shifted and lifted its head. Yeah. Whoever that is isn't a genin. His frown deepened and he jumped down from the top of the trees to the ground. Sasuke and Sakura shared an exasperated look and went after him. Oi dope! What are you doing? Naruto glanced back at them. You can't feel that? He asked. A large amount of chakra building around us. The two just gave him odd looks, causing him to roll up. Genins, he muttered to himself. His eyes widened and his head snapped up. Incoming! He shouted as a wave of intense chakra slammed into him, followed immediately by a gust of wind. His eyes widened as Sakura was blown away. Sakura! He shouted. He growled and let himself be picked up off the ground, flying after her. Finally he slid to a stop, the wind still whipping around him. Sakura-chan, where are you? Naomi appeared next to him. Yuri found the girl. Apparently the Uchiha is with her. Naruto relaxed just a little. Thank God for the little mercies. Where are they? Naomi turned. This way. Naruto slid to a stop as he stared at the man talking to his teammates. Fear crept into every pore of his body. This close he knew that chakra. Orochimaru, he whispered, shaking. He shook himself out of it. He reached up and turned on the calm hidden in the base of his ear. Nico-san. We have a problem. Natsuki's voice echoed in his ear. What's wrong? He took a deep breath but still couldn't stop his voice from trembling. Orochimaru, Takako shouted over the link. Taicho. Taicho, don't engage. Do you hear me, Taicho? Don't engage. Naruto closed his eyes. I don't have a choice. He's got my team. He reached up and shut off the link, ignoring the other shouts. He took a deep breath and jumped down, snapping open his Tessen. Kamaitachi no Jutsu. Orochimaru looked up at him in surprise and jumped away. Naruto! Sakura shouted in surprise. Naruto kneeled down as he landed in front of them, raising the Tessen into a defensive stance. You two just can't stay out of trouble, can you? He snapped. Sasuke frowned at him. What's your problem, dope? The blonde glanced back at them, eyes hard and cold. They flinched away. That is no genin, he informed. Sickening laughter met his ears, causing him to turn back to his enemy. He slowly stood up. Orochimaru, classified missing nin, once a member of the legendary 3 nin of Konoha. What are you doing here? Orochimaru laughed again. My. What an interesting little boy. It's truly nothing for you to be concerned about. A smirk crossed the man's lips and he dove forward to attack Naruto. Naruto frowned and jumped up and away. When Sasuke stepped forward, he shouted down at the boy. Stay there. You're no match. Sasuke glared up at him. And you are? The blonde growled and jumped away again when the missing nin attempted to hit him again. Think you dumbass, this is a high-level missing nin? What purpose do you think he'd have coming after a simple genin team? The Uchiha frowned. Before he could respond, Naruto replied. Against a couple of weak genins, none. Unless there was something on that team that he could nowhere else. When Naruto saw the boy wasn't getting it, he rolled his eyes. And they call you a genius? He shouted in disgust. Your eyes, Sasuke. He couldn't get the Sharingan anywhere else, probably from your brother, but you're the easier target right now. He felt a brief wave of relief flow over him when he saw fear flash through the dark eyes. That's right, Sasuke. He's here for you. I might not be any better than you, but if you fail, then it's over. You're just too damn important. Orochimaru stopped and carefully examined the blonde in front of him. Something wasn't right. He growled and brought out Kusanagi. Brat, don't you know not to look away? He asked as he dove forward. Naruto's eyes widened and he slapped the Tessen closed so he could use it to hold off Orochimaru. He grinned at the man. You have no idea just who you're dealing with, do you? He asked. He pushed his chakra out of him at a rapid rate, causing the wind to spin out of control. He let the Tessen slide open 2 notches. Futon, blade dance no jutsu. Orochimaru's eyes widened as hundreds of thin slices jumped out from around the blonde and moved in intricate patterns around him, almost like performing a complicated dance. And he was right in front of the boy. Naruto snapped closed the Tessen the minute Orochimaru moved away and reduced the Tessen to its seal form. As he replaced it, he drew out 2 more. He looked up and threw the seals in the air, jumping away to avoid Orochimaru as the man jumped back at him. In the air the seals unwound, revealing their true forms. They cut through the ground, landing on either side of Naruto as the blonde stood. Naruto took a deep breath, ignoring the Kyuubi shouting in the back of his head. What the hell are you doing, brat? Why are you getting into close combat with that creep? Naruto shook his head and reached out, pulling the 2 swords out of the ground. Well, come on. He taunted, sliding into the pose. I just have to wait for Sasuke to get out of here. Sasuke sat down, dragging Sakura down beside him. Alright, listen. We probably don't have much time. How much do you want to help Naruto? Remember, you could die. Sakura thought for a moment before she looked back up. What do we do? She asked. Naruto groaned as he braced against the man's attack. Taking a deep breath, he pushed back and restarted the intricate dance using 2 blades required. He spun and flipped and tried to land a hit with no success. Orochimaru jumped back from his striking range with a smile. You're not bad, brat. One chance. Join me, Naruto growled. Not a chance in hell, he shouted. This is my village. I'm not leaving it. Orochimaru frowned. What a shame. All that talent. Gone. Naruto's eyes widened as snakes suddenly flew at him from all angles. Shit! He cursed, bringing one arm up to block his face. A wave of heat swept over his fire, as he felt chakra bathe the area. Chakra he knew well. That idiot! He thought, turning to stare at his teammates. Sasuke let off the flow of chakra, extinguishing the flame, taking care of the snakes. The Uchiha turned and smirked at him. Need help, dope? You idiot! What the hell are you thinking? What point of him wanting the Sharingan did you not understand? Sasuke glared at him. So you think you can just get away with being the hero, the martyr? Naruto glared back. That has nothing to do with this. I told you not to risk your life for me. Were you not listening, or are you just dumb? Naruto coughed as something slammed into his side, knocking the breath out of him. He and the other person slid to a stop a few feet away from Sasuke as an explosion rocked the area he had once been standing. He turned around and stared at Sakura as the girl grinned. Ha! Beat that, she stated, staring at the smoke. Naruto stood up and glared at Sasuke as he walked towards them. You brought her too? Sakura stood up and glared. I can take care of myself, she shouted. Well, I'm not really convinced with that little act of stupidity. He threw his arms up. I cannot believe you too. Have you no concern for your lives? Sasuke stepped up and hit him across the face. Not expecting the move, Naruto's head jerked to the side. Only years of training preventing him from falling to the ground. You have no right to berate us. You have no concern at all for your own life, so forgive if we try and make sure you don't die. He snapped. You, Uzumaki Naruto, would raise your head and stare death in the face and not even fight back. We are not just going to stand by and watch that happen. Sasuke growled out. Naruto's jaw trembled slightly, and he kept his eyes on the ground as he replied. I told you. I'm not worth your life. His eyes snapped to his left, and he grabbed Sakura to push her out of the way as Orochimaru burst from the cloud. The attack ripped through his jacket and the holster for the Tessen and his shirt. A cry was started out of his throat as his jacket fell away. Never before had he been glad for the bandages he wrapped around the mark on his arm. Sakura sat up quickly, pushing at him. Naruto! She shouted. The blonde winced, resisting the urge to curl into a ball from the pain. Idiots! He muttered. The both of you, to think that would take him out. Slowly he pushed himself and looked around. Where's Sasuke? He asked, looking around. He wasn't there. Shit! He shouted, pushing himself up. They found him curled into a ball in front of Orochimaru, one hand holding his shoulder in pain. Naruto jumped forward. Stay away! He shouted, aiming a hit at Orochimaru. The man grabbed his fist and spun him around. Naruto growled, and the minute his feet hit the ground again he spun back around, his legs shooting out. Orochimaru easily moved away. You might be strong against the other ninjas of Konoha, Naruto-kun, but you're still no match against me. Naruto growled and continued the onslaught. Take care of him, he shouted at his other teammate as he tried to lead the man away. Orochimaru grinned. You're too late, Naruto-kun. The boy is mine. Not yet, he shouted. I won't allow it. He jumped back, pulling 3 Saban out. He threw them up, hands starting to fly through hand seals. As the Saban fell back down he stopped and pushed the chakra out. Ninpon! He shouted. The Saban froze, hanging in the air. Dance of illusions. Slowly the 3 Saban multiplied until he was surrounded. He flipped through a few more seals. Solidify, he whispered. Slowly he brought one arm up above his head and pointed the other towards the ground. He gave a malicious grin. Dodge this, he whispered. He swept one hand forward quickly, the needles following his movements. Orochimaru jumped away, trying to weave through the numerous objects. Several managed to cut through his clothes. One nicked his cheek. Not bad, Naruto-kun. That must take fine control and a lot of chakra to create so many. Naruto growled and brought his other hand forward, the rest of the projectiles flying forward. The other hand carefully guided the other Saban back. Orochimaru shook his head in amusement and moved away. He let his hands move seamlessly through the seals and aimed a fire jutsu at the blonde. Naruto's eyes widened and he jumped away. The Senbon fell to the ground lifelessly and disappeared, leaving only the original ones there. Orochimaru jumped through the fire, and Kusanagi came out of his mouth. Naruto's eyes widened, but he couldn't move while in the air. He tried to twist to avoid the sword from piercing any vital organs. The blade cut straight through his side. Naruto hit the ground hard, rolling slightly before he stilled. His breathing started to shudder slightly as his skin lost color. The poison on the blade was quickly spreading through his body. Naruto! Sakura shouted, trying to figure out how to get to the boy without leaving Sasuke. Orochimaru chuckled. Soon. The boy will be mine soon. The Smiling White Mask of ANBU. Chapter 9. The Chunin Exams. Forest's End. Sakura stared at the man in horror. There had to be something she could do. Orochimaru laughed evilly. Poor Naruto-kun. I can't wait to crush that spirit of yours. You're so convinced that the Uchiha won't defect. I shall enjoy taking him from you. Until then. And he disappeared, still laughing. Sakura gulped, sniffling. Slowly she pulled herself to her feet. She had to get her teammates out of here. Voices drifted softly over the area as two figures sat, ignored by everyone else. How is he? He's fine. I've managed to extract the rest of the poison. But the wound will take time to close on its own. Kubidano will have to take care of it. Then, perhaps, we should be helping that one. The two heads turned to stare at the young girl struggling in the fight. Perhaps we should. Sakura winced slightly as the sound nin continued to hit her over the head. There had to be something she could do. Her teammates were counting on her. She gasped slightly as someone barged into her, knocking her away from Zaku. She sat up, preparing to fight another enemy when worried seafoam green eyes met her own. Are you alright? A scream resounded through the area, causing her to look back at her enemy. Her jaw dropped. A young woman had her hand clasped around the young man's neck. His feet dangled above the ground. The young woman looked back at her with impossibly dark eyes made all the darker by her pale skin and flowing black hair. You alright? Sakura gasped. You're the woman from the bridge, she shouted. She remembered seeing the same woman bantering with Naruto in front of their enemies, holding him as it snowed in a land that had never seen it. She nodded slightly and turned her head to stare at where Sasuke and Naruto were laying. You up yet? Or should we just leave you to die? I'm up. Sakura's head snapped around as she stared at the blonde rubbing tiredly at his eyes. God! I hate getting poisoned, he shouted, wincing slightly. Naruto? She asked with vague hope. The blonde looked up at her and smiled. Yo! He greeted. You okay? He asked. She nodded, smiling widely. Yeah. You? He shrugged. For being poisoned, pretty good. Yuri, you're a lifesaver, he stated, nodding slightly to the blonde girl beside her. Yuri rolled her eyes. And don't you forget it, she stated. Naruto turned and smiled at Team 10. Hey! What are you doing here? He shouted, laughing. The three just stared at him. Seemingly having enough with being ignored, Kin jumped toward the blonde with a kunai. Naruto turned his head to look at her, his smile falling away. Tana, Ruji, he called. Kin's eyes widened as she felt someone wrap an arm like steel around her stomach, dragging her down. She coughed and looked next to her. A red-headed woman glared at her, dangerously sharp nails trailing across her throat. She gulped and turned her head. Her teammate was standing frozen in front of a brunette, flipping knives. Naruto chuckled slightly and turned to stare at Sakura. Sakura-chan, please say hi to some of my friends. The darker one is Naomi, the blonde one next to you is Yuri, and those two are the sisters Tana, the brunette, and Ruji, the redhead. He smiled widely. Naomi looked over at him. Naruto-sama. What do you want me to do with this thing? She asked, shaking the boy in her grasp. He choked, still struggling. Naruto gave the boy a once-over and shrugged. Get rid of him. He paused momentarily and stared at the woman. Don't kill him. Naomi sighed softly but shrugged and threw him towards a tree. It crackled when he hit it, and the boy skidded through the hole he had made to land a ways away, unconscious. Kin recoiled slightly in shock. What are you people? She shouted. Ruji offered her an amused look. Summons, she whispered before hitting the younger girl. Kin fell to the ground. Naruto-sama, look what I found. Tana shouted and waved a scroll in the air from where she was cheerfully bouncing on the other sounding. Naruto rolled his eyes and shook his head. All right. You guys are causing more than enough trouble. Just hand over the scrolls and go somewhere else. Tana pouted and threw the 3 scrolls she had roughly at the blonde. Ruji just pulled them out and handed them over to Sakura. Seconds later the 2 girls were gone. Sakura turned her head to stare at Naruto. I thought summons were animals. Naruto nodded. They are. It's just a very, very powerful illusion. Yuri, deal with Lee first before you leave. The blonde stood quickly and raced over to tend to the downed boy. Naruto shook his head. You know, Lee-san, you're supposed to be saving the damsel, not the other way around, he said in amusement. Naruto looked up and smiled at the boy standing in the trees. You can have your teammate back soon, Hyuga-san. Naomi walked forward. Speaking of Hyugas. Naruto recoiled. Oh, the dark woman glared at Naruto. Natsuki is pissed. I don't see why I'm the one that has to deal with her every time you do something stupid. Expect a slap the next time you see her, she stated. Naruto winced slightly. Suddenly both of their heads snapped to the right to stare at Sasuke as an angry purple chakra covered him. Well, that's not good, Naruto whispered. The blonde stared sadly at his teammate as he stood and felt the power the cursed seal had bestowed him. He turned his head and smiled weakly at Naomi. Can I have you do me one more favor? She nodded and held out her hand as Naruto passed her a small silver necklace with several silver charms dangling from it. Make sure it gets where it's needed, he whispered. Naomi melted into the shadows and reappeared behind Sasuke. He turned in shock, but the necklace was already wrapped around his neck. Naruto watched sadly as the necklace took effect and sent his teammate to the ground. Both Sakura and Ino ran towards him. Naomi stepped away quickly and disappeared. What happened? Sakura cried. Naruto knelt down next to them and fingered the necklace. It's a seal meant to suppress any other seals, such as the one on Sasuke, he stated, and drew one hand over the mark of the cursed seal before drawing his hand back and letting a burst of chakra escape his fingertips. A duplicate image of the seal appeared in front of him. Sakura's eyes widened. What is that? Naruto smiled grimly. That, my dear Sakura-chan, is a cursed seal. It's not what I need though. He hummed slightly and spread his fingertips apart. The image disappeared to show words, numbers, and symbols spread together in intricate patterns. He smiled brighter. That's better, he stated as he carefully examined it. Shikamaru smirked slightly as he examined it. You understand that? Naruto nodded. Of course. If there's one thing I'm good at, it's seals. He looked up. You okay, Lee? The boy smiled grimly and stood slowly. Yuri scowled at him. Now you listen to me, young man. Don't you go stressing yourself for a few more hours. If you do, you'll cause damage not even the best medic can repair, you hear me? Lee nodded, thanked Naruto and Yuri, and left with Niji. Yuri walked over to Naruto. Can I trust you not to get poisoned? She asked. Naruto nodded and waved her away, going back to examining the seal in front of him. Yuri shook her head. I swear, half the time I wouldn't be needed if you had any sense of self-preservation, she stated. And then she was gone. That's kinda creepy, Chuji said. Sakura turned her head to stare at her teammate with Yuri's words ringing in her head. Are you okay, Naruto? She asked seriously. Naruto smiled briefly. I'm alright, he answered. She stood up quickly and shook her head rapidly. No more, you're alright. The truth, Naruto. The blonde stared at her for a minute as Team 10 looked between the two rapidly. Truly, I'm alright, Sakura-chan. What? Do you not trust me? He asked easily. I wish I could. But I've been on this team long enough to realize that you care so damn little about your own life that I can't trust you with it. I think Yuri's right. If you just tried to live through a fight instead of just making sure your enemy doesn't, you could be so much stronger. You wouldn't get hurt so much, Sakura shouted, angry tears welling in her eyes. You call us idiots, but you always make the biggest mistake. You don't truly fight back. How can I trust you like that, Naruto? Ino snorted slightly at the display, ignoring the way Naruto's eyes turned icy. You make it sound like he's suicidal, she said. She recoiled a minute later when Sakura shouted at her as well. Well, he's certainly not trying to stay alive, Sakura, Naruto shouted in annoyance. He glared up at the girl. Enough. It's none of your business, and it's certainly not theirs. Naruto stopped and took a deep breath. I'm sorry. But please, don't tell me how to live my life. He smiled sadly. No matter what you say, Sakura-chan, it won't matter. I lost all value for my own life a long time ago. He stood up and stretched. Now, let's take care of this idiot and get out of here. I can't deal with the seal just now. It'll take about a month of studying it to be able to unwind it. he sighed. There goes my free time. He turned to Team 10 with a grin. You guys need a few scrolls? I find my hands completely full, Sasuke groaned as he slowly sat up. What happened? He asked, looking around. Sakura suddenly appeared by his side. We were waiting for you to wake up so that we could go to the tower. He frowned. But what about the scrolls? Sakura's smile dimmed slightly. Naruto's summons took care of it. She turned her head. We actually have more than we know what to do with. She stood and stretched. Naruto should be back soon. I wonder where he went off to. He stood slowly, wincing slightly. Oh, you're up. Naruto greeted as he appeared. He smiled softly. Good afternoon, sleepyhead. Sasuke grunted slightly, rolling one shoulder. What happened? He asked. Naruto shrugged. I thought Sakura-chan told you. He stated and walked by to start packing up the few supplies in the area. Now that you're up, we can go. Come on. Into the trees. Up, up, up. The two looked at each other and groaned but jumped up into the trees. Naruto slid down to the forest floor near the tower and stretched. Finally. He stated. Sakura walked forward slowly. I didn't think we'd ever make it. Let's get some rest, she said as she walked forward. Naruto placed a hand on her shoulder and jerked her back. Not yet, Sakura-chan. Sasuke frowned at him. What's wrong now, dope? Naruto smiled at the Uchiha. You haven't noticed? We're surrounded. He stated and jerked his head left. A group appeared first there, and then around them. Naruto whistled. I'm impressed. For Genins, that's quite a lot of clones. Mizubushin, they're solid. He shrugged and reached into his bag to pull out a seal. It enlarged into a sword. I guess we'll just have to cut them down till we hit the real ones. He looked at his teammates and grinned. Nah. Naruto took a step forward and smiled dangerously when the Bushin attacked. Where are you? He asked. He took a deep breath before starting to crave a path through the clones that burst at even the slightest touch. A few seconds later his head jerked around when he heard Sakura scream. Quickly he followed the path of her eyes to see Sasuke kneeling on the ground, holding his shoulder. Shit. Naruto flipped over the Uchiha to cut down the clone in front of him and pulled out the other sword. He spun, both swords cutting through the enemies like a knife through butter. He jumped over another clone, one sword cutting through it while the other stabbed one to his left. He ducked below a kunai and drove one blade up. Swinging around, he cut through another. He was so focused in the motions that he didn't realize till warm blood flew across his face. He blinked and looked up in surprise. One of the clones was still there, his blade through their shoulder. That meant he hit a real one. Found you. He whispered and twisted the blade brutally. The boy screamed. The clones disappeared. He stood, shoving one blade into the ground while keeping the other in his shoulder. Now, where are your lovely teammates? He asked. The boy whimpered softly. Naruto sighed and ground the blade in deeper. He screamed. A young girl jumped out of the trees. Stop! We're right here. Just don't kill him. Naruto rolled his eyes and pulled out the sword. Don't be ridiculous. I wasn't going to kill him. The girl blinked. He sighed, pulling the sword back into its seal form. Truthfully, I just wanted you out of my way. He turned his head as what he guessed was the last teammate burst out of the trees. He stepped out of the way of the punch and slammed his knee into the boy's stomach. And let this be a lesson, he stated as the boy fell to the ground holding his stomach. Pick your fights wisely. He looked over at Sasuke and smiled softly. Can you walk? Sasuke snorted and stood. I'm fine. He growled. Naruto sked. Watch it now. Only I'm allowed to say I'm alright even though I'm not. He joked. He smiled at the Genin team. Better luck next time. They really shouldn't be here. Well, maybe the first boy should. I'm still impressed about the clones, he thought as he guided his team towards the tower, ignoring the dumbfounded looks that followed him. Naruto stood back as his teammates tried to put together the puzzle offered to them at the tower. He counted down before deciding that now would be the time when he should be losing his patience. Enough! He shouted and walked forward. The two sent him wide-eyed glances as he took the two scrolls out of his bag and unrolled them. Naruto, no! Smirking, he read the words written and stepped back when a cloud of smoke appeared. Yo, Ruka-sensei! He shouted with a grin. The brunette smiled at him. Hello, Naruto. I'm glad to see you all made it here unharmed. It's my pleasure to say that you all passed. Naruto resisted the urge to laugh at Sasuke's and Sakura's expressions. Now, Iruka stated, smiling. I believe your sensei is waiting for you. There are some rooms reserved for you if you all want to rest. He ruffled Naruto's hair and smiled. And I think a Hyuga's looking for you, Naruto. She seems more than little upset. And violent. He mused. Naruto sighed. Yeah. I'm getting hit. Kakashi smiled at his team. Yo. It's good to see you're all alright. Naruto shrugged. What's the big deal? Nothing really exciting happened. I mean, I happened to get poisoned, Sasuke now has a cursed seal, and Sakura gets stabbed with some kunai. So what? They stared at the blonde. What? He shouted. Where is he? A voice shouted from down the hall, causing them to turn to look. Naruto winced slightly when he saw Natsuki come around the corner. Not good. He whispered. The Hyuga spotted him and walked quickly forward. Bastard! She shouted as she hit him. Naruto coughed slightly as his head jerked to the side. He glared up at Natsuki. What was that for? She glared right on back. We told you not to engage. What do? You get fucking stabbed. Is there no common sense in your body, or do you just not care? Do you know how lucky you are to be alive? Naruto glared. He had my team. How hard would it have been to grab them and run? He would have followed. Then he would have followed. There were ANBU on the way. They would have taken too long. You just had to wait. Naruto was about to snap back when a single tear fell from the pure white eyes. Suki. He whispered. She turned away. You're an idiot. She shouted as she ran. Naruto bit his lip and looked around, spotting the other two members of his ANBU team. Haku merely shook his head and turned away. Takako offered a weak grin but ultimately walked away as well. Naruto sighed. What was that? Sakura asked. Naruto shook his head. Friends. He whispered sorrowfully. Kakashi stopped when he came upon the Hyuga sitting against the wall, one hand over her eyes. Two boys he didn't know were also there, and he was surprised to see Irika as well. He watched as Natsuki shook her head rapidly. He just doesn't get it. He doesn't see that one of these days his luck is going to run out, and he's not going to come back. The young brunette sighed. He gets it, Natsuki-san. He just doesn't care. He stated sadly. Irika flinched. Is it that bad? It can be. Kakashi stated. Irika jumped and looked over at him, but the others didn't budge. They'd known he was there. It is. The oldest man corrected. I'm sure you've noticed. Naruto has a lot of weight on his shoulders. A lot of scars. He's at that stage where he's completely convinced that his life is worthless, Irika-san. It's as simple as that. Our only comfort is that he won't kill himself. He won't try to stop his death either. Natsuki snapped. Irika winced. Kakashi sighed. May I ask what my reckless student has done this time that deserves a hit? The brunette smiled grimly. He fought someone where he knew he couldn't win against. Go back to your students, Hataki-san. They could use you right now. What if Naruto disappears into ANBU Chunin exams, Sasuke? Thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoy this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel, and leave a like if you guys need the next part. Comment down and thanks for watching the video, and see you guys in the next video.